and welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to an all-new season of the classic GT3 League, as brought to you by UKSimRacing on the premier sim racing platform available only on PC, known as iRacing. That's right, folks, with the dust having only recently settled from Season 10, which was a major milestone in the history of the GT3 League, we charge our way immediately back onto the asphalt and tarmac for the 11th season. And whilst this season not too much has changed with regards to rules and regulations, there are some key changes afoot, and perhaps the most notable one going to this season, the arrival of Porsche's new machine from Germany, the 992 GT3, replacing the old 991 edition of the 911. It is a car that has been hotly waited for on the iRacing simulator platform, and it may just serve to shake things up over the course of a 9-round calendar, which is going to be absolutely ram-packed with racing action, with 60 drivers on the grid, 3 driver classes, driver class championships abound, and a team's championship overall to compete in. It's the GT3 League that you know and love, and we kick it all off today at the Fuji International Speedway. Located in Japan, this circuit is a famous circuit for a multitude of reasons. It's the first circuit in which a televised Formula 1 was brought to your television screens around the world. The infamous Rush battle between Niki Lauda and James Hunt, dating back to, if my mind serves me correctly, 1975 or 76, one of the two. I'll get it right one day. But the key point being is that this circuit is steeped in history and is a staple of international racing calendars, including Super GT, previously Formula 1, and also the FIA World Endurance Championship. At its core, you're looking at it right now in the background, a 0.92 mile start-finish straight, while the longest you'll ever see on a road racing circuit. But it's not just about the straight of this circuit. That would be to belie the nature of the fact this circuit is perhaps one of the most technical out there in Japan. For the simple reason, as the lap goes on, the average apex speed gradually descends, and it's all about highly technical corners in the second half of the circuit, with a winding sequence that leads our drivers from the very bottom of the circuit at Dunlop Corner all the way up to the very peak of the circuit onto the start-finish straight to complete the lap and do it all over again. In the commentary booth, you have myself, Paul TX141 Walsh, also known as Britain a Spit, depending on what media you follow me on. Now we bring you all your racing action over the course of the entirety of Season 11, and it's an absolute pleasure to be back in the commentary booth once again. And without further ado, let's take you through the schedule. And as we can see, we start off today in Japan, with the racing having occurred on the 25th of June. But today's broadcast and the broadcast of round number 2, you'll see there, have been caveated with a little bit of an asterisk there to say that they are post-round broadcasts. What does that mean? Well, the racing action is not going to be brought to you live on the UKSimRacing YouTube channel, which you're currently tuning into, and make sure to subscribe to it if you haven't today, in order to start today with all the latest racing action brought from UKSimRacing series. But the broadcast will be brought to you after the round has occurred. But the thing about these broadcasts is they'll be as close as possible to the raw live experience. Indeed, I as your host and commentator do not know what happens over the course of the practice session, which is currently ongoing, the qualifying session, or indeed the race itself, and therefore it's all new to me, and it'll be as close as possible to the raw live experience as if it was happening right now to you guys and girls in the YouTube chat. Although we do ask, if you're tuning in right now and you know the outcome of the race, perhaps you're one of the drivers on the grid, please avoid any potential spoilers for the uninitiated at home, and indeed for me in the commentary booth. And well, round number 1 was on the 25th of June. We bring it to you today as of what is this Friday the 30th of June, and round number 2 will see our drivers make their way from Japan to Spain for a double header that starts off at the Circuito de Jerez on the 2nd of July. That post-round broadcast will be brought to you on what is Tuesday the 4th of July, so not too far away, and then all future broadcasts from round 3 onwards will all be live from circuit side. And round number 3 will see our drivers take on the newly introduced iRacing Motorland Aragon, and that is going to be an interesting one for the fact it's a circuit that most of our drivers do not know out of the box, and therefore they haven't spent a lot of time in already to learn it. And that on the 9th of July we'll really see the ante upped, if you will, and then we'll be making our way from Spain to the United States of America for the Virginia International Raceway, or VIR, a circuit which is the classic in the States, and we'll get to see our drivers take on a classic in GT3 class machinery. Indeed a staple of the GT World America calendar, and it's going to potentially become a staple of the GT3 series as time goes on. But now we're on the 16th of July, and you can see that all 4 of our first rounds being sprint rounds, and we do have that combination of sprint rounds, which are 45-minute races, and endurance rounds, which are 90-minute races, and there are 2 endurance rounds, which will be in the second half of the season. But before we get onto the second half of the season, after round 4, there will be a break fortnight in order to accommodate a number of official iRacing endurance events, and after those we'll be returning for round number 5 at Road Atlanta, the classic roller coaster ride of road racing in America in the state of Georgia, and that'll be on the 6th of August. If our drivers are able to keep it on the tarmac then, keep it calm and consistent, then they'll be put to the test by the all-rounder circuit, and perhaps the ultimate pre-season testing circuit if you're into the world of Formula 1 in particular, and that's the circuit of Barcelona Catalunya, as we return to Spain for the third and final time this season, and that'll be the sprint race on the 13th of August. After that, we remain in continental Europe. We'll be making our way to neighbouring France for the classic Le Mans circuit, or the Circuit des 24 Hours de Mans, and recently played host to the centenary of Le Mans. And then on the 20th of August, we'll see the first of our endurance race rounds. And what a great circuit to hold the endurance race at, and one that's going to be a test of machinery, particularly straight line speed and braking potential of our drivers, and also their relative stamina in round number 7. And then the penultimate round of the season, we make our way to Australia, and that's where we stay for the remainder of the season, with Phillip Island's Grand Prix circuit hosting our drivers on the 27th of August. Less known compared to most circuits around the world, particularly in the Oceania region, but it's definitely going to be one which will be enjoyed for its sweeping corners, its notable elevation changes, and also its extended straights. And we bring it all to a close at another endurance classic, Mount Panorama, but you know and love it as Bathurst. That'll be round 9 of 9 on the 3rd of September, and that'll be a test of who can survive the mountain. We have an absolutely ram-packed calendar, plenty of circuits on score, and plenty of variety as well. The calendar continues not to disappoint from season to season. And now let's go to our circuit for today. For it's none other than the Fuji International Speedway, of which our drivers will be taking on the no chicane layout of it. A bit of a different layout. Normally we see this circuit run in its entirety, but it's been decided that this season we run the no chicane layout, and located near the town of Oyama in the Sunto district of the Shizuoka prefecture of Japan. This is a circuit which sits in the footfalls of the Japanese mountain of Mount Fuji, and indeed in the picturesque countryside, you'll be forgiven for missing it. But the key thing about this circuit is the fact it is a highly technical circuit, as we mentioned earlier, albeit when you look at that start-finish straight you would think this is a power circuit, but in fact it's not. It's all about approaching those apexes and carrying as much speed as possible over lap. And we'll walk you through it as provided by the circuit map provided by iRacing.com. Thanks to them for the wonderful simulator and the circuit map. As our drivers make their way across the start-finish straight down towards turn number 1, it's a very heavy braking zone to begin, and arguably the heaviest braking zone on the circuit. And as they come through the right-hand hairpin, they'll be through the Kinker 2 and up towards turn number 3. Through Coca-Cola Corner, it's all about maintaining speed and having the confidence to use the runoff area to your advantage and hitting the curb at the same time. And as they come out to left-hander, it's then into 100R, the double right-hander that starts at turn number 4 and engages at turn number 5. The key point being turn number 4 is wide open. You can go 2-3 wide into the corner, but it's only really one line, and it's the apex at turn 5 which is going to be the deciding factor about who emerges in the lead in the run towards turn number 6. There our drivers will make their way into the hairpin. It's a downhill braking zone with an off-camber corner as well, with a slight off-camber nature at the apex, and the corner can catch many a driver out if they're not careful, and therefore we'll see our drivers brake very early for the corner, but as they emerge they'll look to get back to full throttle as soon as possible and make their way through the Kinker 7 and all the way through 300R down towards turn number 10 at Dunlop Corner. There from the double right they go into the right-hand Kinker turn number 10, a quick swap on the brakes followed by a downshift or 2, and they'll go through the sweeping right-hander and make their way up the hill towards turn number 11. And then these final 4 corners, the circuit goes for a major elevation change rather rapidly, and you'll note that going all the way down towards Dunlop Corner, our drivers have been descending quite rapidly, and now they're going to regain all the altitude they've lost in quick succession. The right into turn number 11 is a blind apex right-hander, which is followed up by the double left of Nets Bend at turns 12 and 13. Flat out through 12, they need to position the car well for 13, which is a blind apex left-hander, with the summit being on the apex curb. Hit the curb too hard and you'll end up spinning out, but get it just right and you'll find yourself all set up for the run to turn 14. Panasonic corner awaits, and there were the widest approaches to the apex known to road racing. You can see drivers sometimes go up to 5 wide depending on the discipline into the corner, and I suspect some of our drivers may be considering going 3 wide into there, with there being multiple lines available, albeit there's one ideal line in qualifying, but when you're going racing, particularly if you're battering, there's about 3 or 4 different ways you can take Panasonic corner. It's going to be interesting to see what happens at the final corner as our drivers emerge and make their way onto the start-finish straight to complete the lap and do it all over again. And indeed, with the start-finish line being 2/3 of the way down the straight, you can imagine that perhaps the battling will be settled by the drag race to the end rather than the battle itself out of the final corner. But going from our circuit, let's come on to our rules and regulations. We have to do so, otherwise we can't go racing. And in terms of setup, drivers are not permitted to change their car without penalty at any point during the season. So whatever car a driver brings to this this round today, they must stay with it for the whole season, otherwise will pick up a major points penalty. Car fuel loads are also being restricted to 50% for all races compared to the previous 45% from Season 10. And qualifying wise today, we stay with the traditional lone qualifying format, where all our drivers take to an instance of the circuit which is isolated specifically for them, and therefore they don't have to worry about traffic management, and they have 10 minutes to set their best possible time with unlimited laps, something that is new for this season. Previously it was 4 laps within the 10 minutes, but now they have unlimited laps. They can keep pumping the laps out until they get it right or they run out of time. Now on top of that as well, when we look to the races, in general they'll continue to commence via a double file rolling start. There are no mandatory pit stop requirements, although we typically expect there to be at least 1 pit stop in the sprint races and 2 in the endurance races, if not 3. Each driver has 1 fast repair available, and all race shielding shall be conducted post-race. Sprint race wise, a driver shall receive a drive-through penalty if they accumulate 17 or more instant points. Indeed, they'll be looking to avoid those as best as possible, but that's enough rules, regulation, erroring between. You're here for the racing and so am I, as we make our way back to the circuit. Let's take you through our scheduled times in British Summer Time, that's BST, or Universal Coordinated Time +1, UTC +1, and we can see in just under 5 minutes time we're making our way into the maiden qualifying session of the season. That'll be at 8 o'clock this evening, 10 minutes in duration, and we won't get to see all the drivers out there because of the fact we're using an iRacing replay file to see the action, but instead we're going to be focusing on one driver in particular. I do believe it'll be Neil Smith who we get to see do his qualifying session, and we can use the opportunity with the AM driver to be able to see how you approach Fuji and the key attacking points, and where we're going to see the potential flash points for instants and battles over the course of the lap. On top of that as well, straight after qualifying we'll be making our way to the grid for our 45-minute sprint race at 10 past 8 approximately. Indeed, we've got plenty to come as we get ready to go race, and it is a hot day here today in Japan as well, with an ambient temperature of 26 degrees centigrade but a track temperature currently of 38 degrees centigrade, and I wonder if that's going to play a factor for some cars, particularly the mid-engine rear-wheel drive machines, that may just wear down those rear tyres a little bit more compared to most. But that's enough full process and theory crafting for now, as we do look at some drivers making their way on around the circuit with 4 minutes remaining, and we can see there we have the return of the Elite, the Pro and the AM classes, and Nathan Scott from Empire Motorsport once again running in the Elite class. And this season opting to go with the BMW M4. Interesting choice there for the number 13 driver. We've typically seen Empire Motorsport associate themselves more with the Porsche 991 or alternatively the Mercedes AMG Evo, but they've opted to go for the BMW M4, at least for Nathan Scott, as he makes his way on through there, and as he rolls his way through, going from one elite driver to another. Here is your elite champion from season 10. He's back in full force. He's decided to put the Porsche away and go with the BMW M4. It's Håkon Grestad, the Norwegian, with the number 1 on the side of the car. It's great to see that he is running the champion's number. Indeed, that is going to be a major target on his proverbial back, and he'll be looking to defend that crown as best he possibly can. But right now it does seem as though he's got a bit of a hot contention from this man. In fact, I was going to say from Eric Rosa, but Eric Rosa has made his way into the pit lane. I think got out the car, so we're not going to be able to quite see him at the moment. In fact, we will be able to see him now, and there he is, the Racing Lab Esports AM driver in the number 42 car. And well, he does seem to have the fastest lap in this practice session currently of a 34.890, only 1,000 faster than Damien Lovett, who you see there in the rear of the picture in the Symphony Esports Porsche 992 as well, as he gets himself set. But meanwhile, as we wait to go into the qualifying session, we do look to some of our, pro drivers, including Aaron McGregor, the Scotsman from ProTech Motorsport, as he makes his way through Dunlop Corner. It doesn't quite look the same Dunlop Corner when it's not the hairpin, but still we'll come to know and love it. And as he makes his way through turn number 11 into 12 in the Ferrari 488 GT3 Evo. You'll remember Aaron McGregor back from, if my memory serves me correctly, season 9, where he was the AM champion in absolutely dominant fashion. Despite the aspirations of Darren Sharplings in particular, McGregor was able to stay one step ahead all the way through the season, and that's why he's in the pro class here, looking to step up his game. And it does look as though he's already stepping up versus the likes of Casper Bronner, who he's only 1.5 tenths off of. But as he makes his way down, we do say hello to a new driver to the grid this season from Downforce Racing, the American Chris Kirkland, as he makes his way into turn number 1. Very fancy livery on that car, I must say. It's definitely going to catch the attention of the crowd, and indeed the hearts of many of you tuned in at home, with the black, white separated by the purple, pink and yellow sashes. And as he makes his way into turn number 3, also opting to go with the Porsche. Going through the left-hander there, we do look from Kirkland to another one of our pro drivers, another newcomer for this season, Casper Tunstead, as he makes his way on through it and down towards turn number 10. And the UKSimRacing driver from Denmark, also in the Porsche 992. And we do have a lot of Porsches on the grid this season, and I think a lot of drivers feeling as though the new car may be favourable given the current balance of performance. You can imagine if a balance of performance change occurs mid-season, that may put a spanner in the works. We'd have to wait and see how that is going to be negotiated, as meanwhile Rudy Avitzland there decides not to negotiate turn number 1, but instead parks up for Racing Lab Eve Sports AM2. But looking from him to a regular from the last couple of seasons in the M class, Marvin Cruz of Bike Racing at the German there in the number 90 Porsche, making his way on through, and you'll see him there in the MVR machine. I believe that is essentially Marvin Cruz Racing, but as he makes his way on out of turn at number 6-7 there, representing Bike Racing and his team, and as he gets ready to go, we do say hello to a good number of you in the YouTube chat, including but not limited to Damien Black, Stuart Pearson, Zero, Ryan Walker, Science, Honors Racing, Sean Cranley Swash, Cy Anthony, and also there Nathan Scott, Oyvind Auckland, and Thomas Asbau. If I've missed anyone, I do apologise. It's great to see so many of you tuning in, as we do see here Team Sim Racing Chicago's BJ Alvarez making his way on through. Also a newcomer to the series in the number 24 Porsche, and we are only 10 seconds away now from going into the qualifying session. And we will have to step away from circuit side briefly, ladies and gentlemen, to go into qualifying. We'll explain exactly why very shortly, but we'll be right back in approximately no more than 45 seconds for qualifying. Don't go anywhere, you won't want to miss it. As we return going into the qualifying session, ladies and gentlemen, we do apologise for having to step away briefly there, but to explain, as we do wait for Neil Smith to make his way out of the pit lane, indeed we'll get to see his qualifying session. Every so often when we do use an iRacing replay file for the purposes of a post-round broadcast, what can happen on the transition between practice and qualifying is that suddenly the timing tower will just refresh itself with all the final qualifying times from the qualifying session, and we don't really want to have the surprise at the end of qualifying ruined for us, albeit in this scenario where we've got lone qualifying, we are only going to see the times from the disaster-prone racing driver. So it's going to be a little bit of a quiet qualifying session. When we go to the grid for our race today, we'll suddenly see all those times appear, and that's why we've just taken that little safety measure, not to ruin the surprise when we go to the grid. But as Smith makes his way down through turns 4 and 5, and we say hello there to Sherwood, I do believe that is Sam Sherwood. What can we expect today in terms of qualifying and the nature of the Fuji circuit? Well, as we said earlier, this is a deceptively technical circuit. Whilst it does push down a lot with regards to power on that start-finish straight, and also the run out of hairpin at turn number 6, down towards Dunlop corner at turn number 10. Do not be fooled by the fact having a car that goes very well around medium to low speed corners is going to benefit you in the long run. But with that contrast, we can expect that certain machines are going to go well at certain parts of the circuit, and others are going to excel elsewhere. The BMW M4, a bit of a jack of all trades, master of none, albeit it leans a bit more towards top end speed and acceleration, and it lacks a little bit in low speed corners, particularly when it's braking down from a high speed down to a low speed, because the brakes on the BMW not necessarily seen as the safest pair of brakes compared to, say, those of the Audi R8 alternative the Porsche 992. So what that means is we may see the BMW drivers and also the Mercedes drivers that struggle a little bit in the more technical second half of the lap, but particularly the Mercedes, for the fact it struggles to put the power down in low to medium speed corners. Any corner that is third gear or lower, we normally do see Mercedes drivers really having to squirm on the rear end of the car and trying to keep the car pointed in a straight line, because it's trying to deliver so much power of the 6.3 litre V8 engine. But as we see Smith making his way across there, all 6 cylinders of the BMW M4 absolutely flying high, and the menacing grille to go with it. Well, in terms of the qualifying around here, it is going to be all on how our drivers get on with the car. And as Smith makes his way onto his first flying lap, we'll jump on board with his second flying lap when he comes around, still getting those tyres and brakes up to temperature. It normally does take drivers at least 2 laps to be able to get that temperature in, or at least 1 fast lap and the out lap. And as he makes his way on through here, where are going to be the key flashpoints for the Fuji circuit? Well, in terms of overtaking spots, the given one is the start-finish straight, the drag racer down towards turn number 1. Turn 6 hairpin, which you see here, Smith making his way through right now, it's also a major overtaking opportunity, but it's a very tricky corner to get right, because you may go out the inside of another driver, overextend under braking, only to let your opponent cut back on you on the run through turn 7 and all the way down towards Dunlop at turn number 10. This will be a place as well we can expect overtaking, albeit perhaps not as naturally, given the fact we've got the sweeping right-hander rather than the hairpin configuration, but let's not say it's not possible. And then coming up towards Nets Bend, we will see drivers go line astern through turn 11. As they come through 12 into 13, this is an overtaking opportunity if drivers are very close to one another, but really you need to play it smart here and decide when you're going to attack. Do you go at 13, or do you go here into Panasonic corner at turn number 14? And if so, can you compromise your opponent's line so that way you get the best possible run down towards turn number 1? Perhaps at the end of the race, this is where you go for the move and try and out-drag your opponent. But either way, as Smith makes his way down the start-finish straight, we do have some overtaking zones around here, and it'll be interesting to see who's able to pull off those overtakes where and when. But as we jump on board with Smith, let's take us around for a flying lap on the Fuji circuit. Making his way down towards turn at number 1, going up towards top gear, albeit staying in 5th gear and finally getting to 6th as he looks at his left-hand board there, braking the 154, going all the way down the gearbox to the 2nd gear, connects the apex very nicely, uses the run-off curve there to extend the corner, doing his way back up through the gearbox, up to 3rd gear, then up to 4th as he continues to rise, and now looking to his right side for his brake marker for turn number 3, 50-meter board, shut the car in 4th gear, back on the power immediately to settle the car down, now going into turns 4 and 5, tight entry into 4, this line you want to let the car roll out slightly, then bring it back to the apex to turn 5, back to full throttle, sweep the car to the right for the hairpin at turn 6, and braking there about 75 metres from corner apex, downhill braking zone on the exit, back on the power, up to 3rd gear, as he makes his way out turn number 7 and down towards turn number 10. Going through 300 R, now building up the speed, heading up towards 5th gear, and looking to his right-hand side for his brake marker. It's not an easy one to spot. You're braking there about 125 metres from corner apex. Gets a little bit too high in the apex curve, that unsettles the car, but catches it in time. And heading into turn number 11, average apex speed really dropping now. 2nd gear through the right-hander. You see that relatively blind something. Now braking into turn 13. We can't see the apex curve right now, but Smith will be able to, and then he connects the dots together, makes his way out the corner, brings it back over to the left-hand side for turn number 14, and back onto the brakes here. Dropping all the way down to 2nd gear, gets a nice smooth line, back on the throttle there, exit power down, and making his way for a little bit of oversteer there as he made his way out of the corner, just not quite able to get the balance between power and steering lock absolutely spot on, but still to learn from that one for the next one. His first lap round was 36.578 as he comes across the line this time around. He's now 36.429. I think he feels as though there's a bit more time out. I reckon he's got at least another 10th in it as a minimum, based on those little wobble moments when he had the oversteer kick in, but it's time that actually does come. And to be fair, some drivers will go out there now, particularly with the fact they've got unlimited laps available in the qualifying session. It's a time-bound qualifying session. I would imagine we will start to see drivers opt to either go with a limited amount of fuel, so fuel enough for an out lap plus 2 flying laps, and then come into the pit. Alternatively, we may see some drivers opt instead to put a maximum fuel tank in for the qualifying session, the maximum in order to get to the end of the 10 minutes, and just keep drilling in the laps, because the tyres are not necessarily going to go off after 4 or 5 laps, depending on the length of the circuit. Around here, with that average lap time being just over 1.5 minutes, if you do some quick mathematics, you take 2 minutes to the out lap, so you've got an 8-minute session, divide it by 1.5, and well, when you do the numbers there, you end up with 5 laps. Keeping in mind there's no overtime in this qualifying session as we're to understand it, so therefore when the clock strikes 10 minutes, all the drivers are immediately returned to the pit, and then they need to get ready to go onto the grid. But you effectively have 5 laps in this session in which to be able to set your best possible time, and I think Smith's going to make the most out of them. But as he heads up the hill towards turn number 13 at Nets Bend at this time, in terms of other things to watch out for, slipstream not available in qualifying, but it will be a major factor in the race with that start-finish straight. And well, regardless of which simulator, and you will normally see slipstream trains running down out of the final corner towards turn number 1, for the simple reason, if you can save a little bit of fuel behind your rival, then when you come into the pits, that expected pit stop, you won't have to spend as long stationary. Although we do have in mind, of course, the fact that we have the ability to refuel cars and change tyres simultaneously. And tyre change-wise, given the fact this circuit is clockwise and the left side tyres take an absolute pounding around here, particularly in warm conditions, I wouldn't be surprised if we see the rear left tyres of most cars getting changed, and also perhaps the front left as well, where otherwise if it's not changed, some understeer may creep on in. But Smith makes his way on through that. Only 3 minutes left to go in this qualifying session. We do see some thoughts from you guys and girls in there, including Zero saying, hope I get some TV time. Well, I'm not quite sure who you are, Zero, in relation to the drivers on the grid, but I'm sure you may end up on TV at some point. We also do see there what is then Sean Cranny Swash saying, I thought GT3 was on Sundays. We do apologise for a little bit of confusion with regards to the Sundays and whatnot, but I do hope it's now been clarified with this being a post-round broadcast. We do also say hello there to Darren Sharples and to that guy Moles. I do believe that Ryan Moles, who wasn't able to make this round, but is hoping to make every other round of the season. And that's a good point, actually, whilst we do have an idle moment. With regards to the rounds this season, another minor change. We've got 9 rounds, 2 of which are dropped by our drivers over the course of the season, with every round being worth an equal amount of points. So therefore, our drivers can drop any 2 rounds, but there's one exception. You cannot drop the final round of the season. That will be scored regardless of whether you participate or not. So if you're not able to make the final round of the season, or you retire on the mountain in Australia, it's 0 points to your name, and you will lose points elsewhere, and that will be on the minds of our drivers, and it definitely pushes our drivers to the absolute limit, as we do see Smith make his way down, and in fact Moles was Moles was here. In fact, so I do apologise there. I think I'm getting you mixed up with somebody else who wasn't able to make it, so I do apologise. It has been a bit of a moment. They're studying all the names, and well, another Walshism being made as we see Smith crossing the line as he makes his way on through and up towards turn number 1, but decides to park the car up, and that is his qualifying session essentially done and dusted. And what I do believe now, the qualifying session finishing, if you will be making our way over to the race. But it's been interesting with 36.252 to his name for Smith. And, well, now just waiting to see how the other times are going to line up. And, well, track position could be critical around here, but at the same time, overtaking is possible. And perhaps having some friends to work with, or enemies who become friends for a brief moment to work with regards to slipstream could be handy. We'll have to wait and see how it plays out in practice, but only moments away. But as we do wait around here with regards to this circuit, Fuji being a circuit that's a regular feature on not just the Super GT and FIA World Endurance Championship calendars, but also on a number of domestic calendars in Japan, including the Super Formula Series and smaller Cup Series. Indeed, it's a circuit that does draw a large number of individuals to it year in, year out. And as we said earlier, it has played host to Formula 1 in the past, albeit this circuit has undergone multiple evolutions in its time. And the circuit nowadays is very different. This is the 2005 GT configuration, if you will, that you're now seeing. It's been in place since 2005, but we have seen this circuit really evolve since 1976, where back in the 70s it was a much more sweeping layout when there was a lot less technical aspirations with regards to the circuit. It was more about carrying speed from corner to corner and straight line speed. But as the qualifying session now comes to the end, well, we have had our 10 minutes there, and well, we'll get the transition now, albeit we do have a 5-minute warm-up session which is there, albeit what we can do thanks to the power of a little bit of replay magic, we can skip forward to the gridding process, and our drivers will be making their way to the grid. As they make their way onto the grid, this is how they line up for our first race of the season. Eric Rosev takes pole position in the elite class and overall for Racing Lab Esports AM, joined on the front row by Damien Lobbit for Symphony Esports. Behind them on row number 2, it'll be Ryan Davis for TT SimSport Kimmy and Sam Sherwood for ProTech Motorsport, with Joe Newman for Empire Motorsport starting on the 3rd row of the grid, joined by pro pole sitter Aaron McGregor for ProTech Motorsport in a great pole lap from him. Ekon Gustad starts P7 there for EDM Motorsport in a difficult qualifying session compared to his previous best of season 10, joined on the 4th row of the grid by Andy Jones for iRacing at DCW Racing. Completing the top 10 on the 5th row of the grid is the combination of Ryan Moles, who we've said wasn't here, but he definitely is here, and I do apologise once again for ProTech Motorsport and Team Year 1's Reese Saunders. Peter Cox starts the best of rest P11 for UKSimRacing Clark, joined by Old Dudes and Cars is Daniel Page, your reigning pro champion, and then behind them on the grid, in fact, reigning AM champion, I believe. I'm a little bit ahead of myself there, but either way, Casper Rotner starts P13 for Old Dudes and Cars, and he'll be on the 7th row of the grid, joined by Racing Lab Esports AM2's Thomas Aspalg. Starts on the 8th row of the grid, it's Darren Sharples for UKSimRacing Price and Cy Anthony for Symphony Esports, with Chris Constable for UKSimRacing Moss and Downforce Racing Chris Kirkland's behind. And completing the top 20, it's Mark Davison and the company at Casper Tunstead. We have Aaron Beaver starting on row number 11, joined by Ryan Walker, with Richard Jones and Matt Strand behind him on row number 12. On row 13, it's Ben Thompson and Alan Lever, with Alexander Trimino at Mikkels, starting at P27, joined by Mark Johnson for UKSimRacing Clark. We then have Stephen at Parker Hamilton starting on the 15th row of the grid, joined by Brandon Hay for Newbridge Esports. Jack Wyburn and Neil Smith on row number 16, ahead of Kenny Korokoran and Simon Andre Livingston. Then completing the 18th row of the grid, it's Thomas Barjat and John Doble, with the 19th row of the grid going to Stein Arsani and Simon Hartley, with Rudy Anselland and Marvin Cruz completing your top 40. Row 21, it's Satinder Dinsa and Sean Gaffney, with Ricky Pink and Stuart Pearson behind on row number 22. Row 23 goes to Paul Joseph Cliss and BJ Alvarez, and then the final row of the grid consists of Rob Armstrong and Nathan Scott starting off on the 24th row of the grid. That's all our grid set, ladies and gentlemen. It's time for us to go racing, and as our drivers make the way on down behind the safety car, we will very shortly see Eric Rose here determine the pace as we get ready to go green for the first time this season. And the question is, who is going to come out on top after 45 minutes of racing? Let's find out. Painfully long way to go racing, but we are green for season 11 of the GT3 League hosted by UKSimRacing as Rosev leads us down towards turn number 1. Everyone battling on the brakes already, 4 wide in the rear of your picture. It's going to get very crowded on the braking there. It looks like we do have Reece Saunders battling side by side with Peter Cox, but as they make the way out to the open hairpin and up towards turn number 3, everyone emerges unscathed in the top 20, and as they roll the way through, Rosev gets a brilliant start ahead of Damien Lobbit, but everybody right now trying to factor up some positions as soon as possible as they roll the way through the left hand at turn number 3 and down towards 4-5. But now it becomes a line of stone for a brief moment. Further back, Chris Constable looking for the move here versus Darren Sharples as he comes from through the right hand, but in return he's got the pressure of Mark Davison. And as they come out of 5 in towards 6, everybody onto the brakes looking now to try and gain an advantage. And speaking of that, Thomas Aspau under pressure from Kirkland. As Kirkland looking for the move there, Daniel Pays as well, just a little bit further ahead, sweeping on through 300R. As they come down towards turn at number 10, in towards Dunlop, Andy Jones here on the run versus Joe Newman. In fact, Newman who goes in very hot and gets it sealed and done there for Empire Motorsport, moves up to P6 in the elite category, P7 overall. As they roll the way through, meanwhile further down the order, Neil Smith leading in the M class. He makes about turn number 10 car going from that's Alan Lever who's gone the long way round. At turn number 10, Sean Parker Hamilton is now, Stephen Parker Hamilton I should say, up the inside there, Neil Smith, and it's all gone very, very tragic there for Parker Hamilton as Neil Smith regains the play. So I'm not quite sure what triggered off that, but meanwhile we see the Amstel coming through here. Let's not forget we've got 3 classes in the field, not just 1 or 2, and as they make the way up the hill towards turn number 14, it's battles are plenty wherever you look at the moment as Thomas Barshett tries to hold off Marvin Cruz. But after 1 lap of racing, it is currently at the front of the field. Eric Rosev who leads ahead of Damien Lobbit by 8/10 of a second and grind. Sam Sherwood P3 ahead of pro leader Aaron McGregor P4, Ryan Davis P5 ahead of Akin Gustad P6, Jonah P7, Reece Saunders P8, Andy Jones P9, followed up by Ryan Moles P10, Pete Scott's Besserer P11, Daniel Pays run up in the pro class currently ahead of Casper Brotner P12 P13, and then looking to the AM class, Neil Smith currently holding the AM lead after taking what was a great lap in qualifying, and right now we're getting to see the disaster prone racing driver deliver on the Premier stage. But as they made the way through 2 and in towards 3, he's got Jack Wyborn and John Dole for company. Jack Wyborn, one of the most unfortunate drivers last season, found himself in a number of instances, so not necessarily his fault, and the TPA racing driver really having to regroup after season 10 and deciding to come back stronger this season, and it's showing right now as the Britain charges on. Albeit we briefly lose him then, hopefully that's not a sign of something to come in terms of connectivity as he makes his way in towards turn number 6 once again, and Smith right now not able to pull away, but meanwhile further back Nathan Scott starting all the way down the order, and Rob Armstrong as well, both drivers are trying to make lost ground, and it's Simon Andre Livingston goes a bit deep, and everyone now a bit scattergun in terms of positioning. Keeping in mind, of course, there's no points rewarded for drivers who finish ahead of drivers at other classes. This is only a class-based points championship, and right now everybody looking to fight in against one of his classes. And Ricky Pink looking up the inside there versus BJ Alvarez, but can't quite find it as Alvarez holds the position, and right now Pink coming to watch on once again. As the Aspire Racing team driver tries to find a way on through. Meanwhile, we look from them to a bit further up the order, in particular to Mark Johnson, running P13, the pro class right now. The UKSimRacing Clark driver, finding himself promoted to the pro class, much like championship winner Daniel Pays. The two of them were so close all season, but Daniel Pays, despite not expecting himself to win, took the win by a small margin in the end. And Johnson right now, in promoted with him, trying to charge down with Ryan Moles, and then Alexander Tremere McCall's as they make the way up, McCallson I should say, as they make the way up towards turn number 1. If I do butcher any names, ladies and gentlemen, during this broadcast, I'm sure I'll hear words of the drivers to help me get it right. But meanwhile, speaking of getting it right, that's going to be Ryan Moles, who goes up the inside, but looks up the brakes then. That's let the ABS carry the car forward. A bit too much speed, and the overspeed there for the ProTech Motorsport driver just catching him out. But right now brings him back to give a nice rejoin, and as he makes the way out towards turn number 3, he won't be making that mistake again, I can assure you, as he comes into left-hander at turn 3 now. But rolling on through, and meanwhile looking from him up towards Ryan Davis, going from one driver with the name of Ryan to another. The TE Simsport Kimi driver continues to chase after McGregor, but he's got Hecken Gustad behind, and right now it does look as though McGregor, Davis and Gustad are holding firm, and nobody can really find an advantage over each other. But as they make the way through the right-hander and up towards turn number 11, meanwhile we do look from them to a bit further behind. That's Andy Jones deciding to take a bit of a, in fact not Andy Jones, my apologies, it was Andy Jones as we looked at Peter Cox, and Jones to take a little bit of a rallycross line out of turn number 10. Got to be careful of that. Keeping in mind, of course, we've got a 17 times instant limit for potential drive-through penalties. But Peter Cox under pressure from Casper Brotner now, and Brotner all over the back of the fellow Porsche driver, albeit across 2 different classes. And I think for Cox, he's having to look more and more in his rearview mirror and thinking, how do I manage this, given the fact we're nowhere near potential early pit stops. Drivers do sometimes go for undercuts in the sprint race, and the undercut can be as early as approximately what is 17 minutes into the race, sometimes even 15 minutes, with a lot of fuel saving on that second stint, and we'll have to wait and see who can play which card. As meanwhile, speaking of the driver pulling out of the toe there, Newbury G-Sports is Brandon Hay, making his way along, but he's not in the toe, and well, Matt Strand right now is going to get the distant toe of what is Chris Constable, and I wonder if Hayes actually burning the penalty here because of the fact he's lifted off the front and just letting the car coast down, and whether he's got an issue, either way, he's dropping places like a stone, and there goes Aaron Beaver around him. Richard Jones says, well, can I have it too? And Hayes says, no, you can't, it's only 4 this time, no more than that, and as they make the way onwards towards turn number 3 and what is lap number 4, charging up, and Alexander Tremino McAllister right now looking for the move there to cover off Bevan Thompson, gets it done, but Thompson over the back of it, we look from the rear of the Norwegian's car. As they make the way through the right-hander of turns 4 and 5, country 100R, here you now are starting to see this battle open up a little bit between them, and we are starting to see there's more isolated pockets of battling, whereas the opening stages, the opening couple of laps of any given race, you normally see the packs really run close together. Now you start seeing these little rivalries, these little niche battles, and Tremino McAllister and what is there, Thompson, both drivers here trying to push on a little bit. Tremino McAllister yet to lose a place or gain one. Meanwhile, Thompson losing 3 places at the starting class, and therefore having to regroup and find some more time. But as they make the way up towards turn number 11, right now it does look as though they're pretty equal to one another as they roll their way up towards next bend. But behind them, a bit further back, we do have Nathan Scott looking for another move here, looking up the inside of Sean Gaffney to take back what is P39 overall. Well, that's not going to help him in his wider aspirations in the elite class, given that he's P15 elite. His next target is Ryan Moles at P27. He has got to close down another 12 places before he starts to make haste towards an elite driver. But on the inside there, Stuart Pearson sees it coming, I think recognises the fact they're in different classes and opts to let this go. But as they make the way onto the drag race, have they lost the toe of the pack in front? As meanwhile we've got a car pointing the wrong way, and that I do believe is none other than what is their Simon Andre Livingston, who's gone around at the final corner. As meanwhile Team Sim Racing Chicago driver Alvarez gains the place as a result. But as they make the way down towards turn number 1, meanwhile you do look up to Ryan Moles, who's still trying to pack a punch and make his way on through here after that mistake at turn 1 a few laps ago. Getting ahead there of Richard Jones and Tremino McAllister, as meanwhile Jones on the inside here, McAllister going into 3, gets it done, car very wide there as well, and I believe, unless I'm very much mistaken, that is the Porsche Matt Strand that's decided to take a little bit of a detour, and as they make the way on through, meanwhile rolling the way up towards turn number 6, that is only going to hurt Strand even more now as he tries to get some momentum back. Moles goes overly deep, but he'll get the acceleration out the corner, so it does look as though Moles really having to knock on the door of every driver he finds, and is having difficulty find his way on through. But looking from them, we've got a bit of a battle and a bit of further back. Steinhoff Sani's had an incident and gone around, so has Stephen Parker Hamilton. We're hearing in my ear right now, he's at the back of the field, he's had a spin somewhere earlier on this lap at turn number 4 or 3 to 4. But as we look from the midfield, we look back up to the race leaders right now of Eric Rosev and Damien Lobbit, and behind them Sam Sherwood, and well, they're in a little bit of a quiet lead, the trio. But I do wonder whether the guys behind Rosev are starting to fuel save a little bit and just coasting on behind, given the fact the slipstream's not that strong anymore in GT3 classes modelled in iRacing. It used to be very strong. Now you have to be within half a second to really start to benefit, and even so, it'll be a tenth or 2 at most, but on this elongated straight, it'll be worth about 4 tenths in the long consideration. But the key point being, if you've got a sniffer toe about 9 tenths back going onto the start finish straight, you can probably use that in a bit of fuel coasting in order to be able to give yourself the run to follow the driver down towards turn number 1, and then you've got to make up the rest over the course of the lap. But looking a bit further back, we can see it's much closer in the battle to be inside the overall top 5, always P4 through to P5 in the elite class, with Heckel Gustave P6 in said class as he follows through. Joe Newman behind him, and then we've got Andy Jones only 4 tenths further behind. And as they make the way up towards turn number 6, I should say, rolling through the left hand, and we jump on board. We're at the Norwegian here in the number 1 car, and burn his way out to the gearbox at the moment, not quite able to find a way past Davies, with Saunders as well, keeping that momentum going as they make the way down towards turn number 10. Newman 3 tenths off, we can't quite see him in the rearview mirror at the moment, given the fact we're currently right on board the roll bar of Gustav's car. Goes a bit deep, however, Newman's going to think about it, but decides not to as they make the way in towards turn number 11. And then again, there's also this big factor, which is, do you really want to battle the guy in front of you if you end up losing the toe to the cars that are up the road? And well, that's only something the judge drivers can decipher, but it does add a bit more of a chess and a tactical element to this racing in terms of the time you may gain immediately in terms of making your way past the driver as he hits you harder later in the race. But you haven't got another driver to try and work with. But meanwhile, we are getting the Jack Wyborn is having some connectivity issues. That's why you see him drop out the lead for the AM class every so often. Hope those issues are not going to pressure him too much. But meanwhile, a little bit of bobbing and weaving there as they make their way through. Andy Jones is into the pit lane, however. He is the first driver to come in for what we suspect will be a scheduled stop. So he's decided 10 minutes into the race, right, that's it, enough. I need some space on the circuit. And will the race summary DCW racing driver have made the right call? I think this is a little bit early, to be fair, but he could prove us wrong as a lot more drivers making the way on through. Including Jack Wyborn here charging on down with Neil Smith behind, looking to move us to Corin as they come up towards one. Going into now the next few minutes of this race. Wyborn puts in the middle road, Smith on the inside. Smith going all in, he takes one, he takes two. Just about gets the car stopped in time. And Neil Smith there with a brilliant piece of manoeuvring with Corin takes the lead in the AM class. I'm not quite sure whether he intended it to work out that way. And immediately Wyborn's trying to come back, but he can't find a way through. And the disaster-prone racing driver not living up to his name there in terms of his team name and making an absolutely brilliant pass as he makes his way through turns 4 and 5. As they make their way up towards turn number 6, can Smith now break away? I think Wyborn may be a little bit shell-shocked by it, but he looks back up the inside immediately. I don't think Wyborn's completely out of this yet as we jump on board with the third place AM driver behind John Doble. And right now the Canadian absolutely fired up as well. And I think this has just brought the battle for the AM lead to life as they make their way down towards turn number 10. Now heading into the braking zone, these three have got quite a bit of a gap as we can see there. Oh goodness me, Wyborn going around the outside of Corin, but meanwhile Doble has to tap the rear of the Pro Porsche driver looking away around the outside. Corin is struggling here as they make their way out there, albeit he holds the position, but Doble right now, I wouldn't be surprised if there's perhaps a little bit of a cursive word going on underneath the virtual helmet for the simple reason his two AM rivals have been given the right to go on through, and now he's got to try and knock the door down here versus Corin as they make their way into the final corner. If patience is going to be his virtue, he'll gain on the toe here, but this has definitely cost him time right now as Wyborn is already 1.1 seconds up the road as they power their way down towards turn 1 once again. But charging on down here, Doble's just got to play this right. He can't let it get into his head, and as they make their way in towards turn number 1, long run to go. Corin's going to pull over to the inside and then switch back to the racing line. Well, Corin now, I'm not sure whether they know where they want to put the car at the moment. Perhaps they're thinking, do I let them go? Do I stay? And that's one of the difficult ones as well. But you've got to think about it when you run at 170 miles an hour down towards turn 1. And as they do, Nathan Scott looking up the inside there and takes the place of a Doble. And Doble really hurt by this after running so closely to the top two in the AM class. Right now falling backwards. And well, he's had a Witzland go up the inside. And the next person is going to be another AM driver in the form of Tom Varshuk as they make the way in towards turns 4 and 5. And Marvin Cruz is not too far behind. This could really be detrimental to the Canadian's drive later on if he's not able to restabilise this. But as they make the way into turn number 6, he'll get his head down and focus. Keep in mind, of course, this is the same John Doble who took the surprise win at Detroit in season 10 in the AM class when nobody could believe it was going to happen. He made it happen, and as they make the way through turns 8 and 9, the battle rages on. But meanwhile, looking from them to a bit further up the road, here is Mark Davison from UKSimRacing Prize, and it's interesting to see the UKSimRacing team decide to differentiate their liveries a little bit more this year in terms of the fact they've got the different main colour on the car, plus also the black and white British flag towards the back, and will absolutely stellar liveries for it as they make the way up towards turn number 1. We're not here to study art, we're here to study racing as they make the way down towards turn number 1. We can do both potentially. They head on through right now. We see a little bit of back and further back. That's Brandon Hay trying to tuck onto the back of what is Ryan Moles as they make the way on down. And as our drivers here all head the line, meanwhile in front of them, Daniel Pay's up the inside of Chris Kirkland. This is a P3 and therefore the final podium spot in the pro class. The Portuguese makes the move there for old duty cars, but as they emerge, it may just be temporary right now. It may be a little bit of to me to you scenario. As you can see there, Kirkland flashing his lights, I think trying to say, well done, you made the pass, let me have that next time around. Now will Page repay him the favour? That will be the question. But as they make the way into turns 4 and 5, we'll come back to that story a little bit later as they roll the way on through, and as they do, meanwhile, it's battles are plenty here further down the order in the battle for P30 for the P31, as we do see Mark Johnson there being sworn by Scott and Corin as they make the way on through. And as we do, we bring up the overall standings on the left hand side of your screen now. Every so often we will switch the overall rather than just the class standings, and you can see here Johnson doing everything he can to try and keep up the group in front, in the dirty air off of the cars in front, really compromising his line right now as really Witzland gets close there for Racing Lab AM, and was the eSports AM2 driver from one of the sister teams that makes his way on through turns 8 and 9. He's cost himself a bit of time running out of turn 6 hairpin, and now you can see that the pressure that John Doble and Thomas Barjack are trying to enact on him as the 43 driver here really finds himself between a rock and a hard place as they make the way up towards turn number 11. The problem now for a good number of drivers, including the Witzland, is if you push too hard, you may end up using more fuel than you want to, but you're also having to worry about the fact you're going to lose time to the drivers behind, and other drivers behind may be more eager to make moves. Kokorin here, looking at the move versus Scott. In fact, it's Scott making the pass on Kokorin if we get our numbers right, and as they made the way through 14, Nathan Scott, I think, feeling as though he can break away from the downforce racing driver, and the Princeton trying to charge away from the American. I think the American may overhaul him here on the straight, as it is a long run, and whilst the Porsche not necessarily known for its straight line speed in the past, the 992 package definitely bringing a bit more straight line speed to them. It's compared to the old 991, and therefore shaking up the tables. So they made the way down, with Kokorin still further back, and meanwhile in front, and this is Jack Wyborn looking up the inside of Alexander Tremino-Michelson as he goes to move the TPA racing driver. And as he does, well, Neil Smith has been passed in all of the action that we've been looking at elsewhere. Unfortunately, we can't get you a replay of how the pass was made due to technical limitations with a replay file. We in turn that Jack Wyborn has retaken the lead of the AM class after Smith's daring moving to turn one a couple of laps ago. But it's not over yet between them. We could see a bit more of a back and forth between them as this race goes into its later distance. But looking from them, meanwhile, looking towards the front of the field, looking into the battle for P2 in the elite and overall categories. And here, Damien Lobbett, after a good start, will be Eric Rosev pulling away at a canter. And right now, the 666 driver from Symphony Esports under pressure from Sam Sherwood. It does look as though Sherwood's starting to feel as though this race is coming back to him. I think Sherwood and Lobbett have both been playing the game of just managing their races, a bit of a mutual act, if you will. Managed the race full of Rosev, and now that Lobbett's lost the leader, I think this is where we're starting to see Sherwood opt to close up a little bit. Let's listen in. Lifting off there well before the braking zone. We were listening to see whether Sherwood was doing quite a bit of fuel saving on the run down, just lifting off the throttle in top gear. Lobbett defending, interestingly, he doesn't feel safe for Sherwood at the moment. I think Sherwood is trying to put some a bit of a knife's edge battle in terms of being close enough to make Lobbett think he's going to go for the move, but he can always back out and opt to fuel save instead, and also save a little bit of tyre compound, and that's where you want to be when you're behind another driver at Circuit Line Fuji. You want to keep them guessing, because if you can get your opponent to start guessing what you're doing and focusing more on what you're doing behind or thinking about it rather than the road, that's where the mistakes come in. And mistakes around here are so easy to make. You see plenty of drivers that get it wrong at turn number 10 already today, and as Sherwood continues to follow Lobbett on around at the moment, not quite able to look for a move, but definitely staying within attacking distance as they come down towards turn number 10. And meanwhile, we do look from them to what is Joe Newman, who's also on the charge here, chasing after Ryan Davies. They come down towards Dunlop corner this time. Newman not quite close enough there, but Davies is going to go wide. He's going to carry the speed back onto the circuit with the runoff area, but I think Newman right now be wary of the fact that Davies has got dirt on his tyres, and Davies goes overly deep then to turn number 11, and the place is lost, and the Empire Motorsport driver moves up into P7 overall, and what is him P6 in the elite class as they made the way onwards towards turn number 14. And just up the road right now, Aaron McGregor from ProTech Motorsport holding on to the lead of the pro class and hold of a number of elite drivers. And let's take a look back at those class standings here, and you see McGregor currently 4.5 seconds clear of his next pro rival, and that is Casper Brotner, who makes his way on the start finish straight now, who in turn has got a 6-second gap to Daniel Page, who with the promotion to the pro class is absolutely flying. And as they make the way on down towards turn at number 1, we do say hello to Chris Edisford in the YouTube chat, who says oi oi, and good evening to you, Chris. And as our drivers make the way up towards turn number 1, meanwhile we do start to see some more pit stops playing into effect, including Cy Anthony into the pit lane here, the Symphony driver from Wales, and he's making way, as is Ryan Moles. So they've decided to go early again, but we're only seeing a limited number of pit stops at the moment. I think a lot of drivers are very hesitant to make pit stops until they see a big swave. It's almost a, I'll go into the pits if you go into the pits. It's a bit of a mind game situation, but meanwhile staying out of the pits and on circuit, the battle for the AM lead between TPA Racing's Jack Wyborn and their Disaster Prone Racing's Neil Smith. Wyborn defended the inside this time, and Will Smith just taking the more classic line, but you can see how the BMW driver is closing as a result of trying to force his opponent on those defensive lines. So they make the way to turn number 3, and rolling the way through the left-hander at the moment. It does look as though for the drivers they're going to be rudely interrupted almost by Nathan Scott there, who pokes his nose in on the inside of Smith and says, do you mind if you just let me through? And I think Smith is trying to get the message through to him, no, I do not want you coming through. As Scott looks at the move, Smith covers him off, and this is going to buy Wyborn a little bit of breathing room, but this is where the classes crossing starts to take an effect. You can understand from Nathan Scott's perspective, he doesn't want to be sat behind AM drivers for the whole race. He wants to go hunting elite drivers who are further up the road and also try and make up some time here whilst he's got the opportunity to do so, because after this pair they've then got an 8-second gap to what is Richard Jones in P20 throughout the road, so Scott could make up a huge amount of time if only he can clear the AM leaders. But understandably Smith and Wyborn have got different aspirations in that regard, particularly Smith, who wants to keep track position versus Wyborn and not let Scott intervene. But as they make the way on through and up towards turn number 14, we could see a bit of an interruption down the start finish straight. But before we do see how that plays out, we look here to Mark Davison, P9 in elite class versus Thomas Aspau, as he looks to move as Aspau into turn number 1. Can't quite find it. The Ferrari driver, they're just not with enough of the legs of the V8 engine. And as they make the way up towards turn number 3, behind them Casper Tunstead stays in position. But making the way on through. Meanwhile, we look to Wyborn versus Smith. They make the way on through. Nathan Scott's going to make it 3 wide. Albeit he's a long way back. And as they head on to the anchors this time, Smith goes early. And as they do, Wyborn takes natural line. Meanwhile, Scott says, with plenty of space on the inside, I'll take 1. And now can he get 2 as well? Can Scott do what he needs to do? As Smith is trying to come back, makes it with 3 wide into turn number 3. And in the end, Scott's going to go all the way around the outside to hold the line. And he clears with Smith. But right now, Wyborn is going to do everything he can to try and keep Scott there for the simple reason the longer he does, the safer he's going to feel when they make the way around. But I don't think he's going to have a chance here. Scott's going to go up the inside. Wyborn will be on the deep. And as they make the way out the turn 6 hairpin, Smith there, a tank slapper, a bit of oversteer as he comes on through. But that goes to show you how hard the number 19 driver is pushing right now. He is giving it everything, and I think there's some frustration in that, and I can understand why as he makes his way into turn number 10 right now. He just wants an opportunity to take on Wyborn. I think he feels as though he can meet and match Wyborn, but meanwhile he needs Scott to clear off. And as they make the way through turn number 11, Wyborn goes deep, and as we jump on board with the BMW M4 driver Smith, making his way up towards turn number 13, really fighting at the steering wheel here to get the car to push through turn 13, the next bend, and now up the hill he goes. But as he does, you can see here Wyborn struggling with the car, goes overly deep there, the car not wanting to point into the corner. The dirty air coming off the back of Scott's car just calls in the nose to not want to bite, and right now as they make their way down the start finish straight, with the gap in 3.5 tenths, it will close. Wyborn will have a sniff at the toe of the back of Scott's car. He's 6 tenths away, so he will gain a little bit, but not as much compared to what Smith is going to gain here as he gets closer and closer, charging all the way down up to top gear now and getting ready to head onto the brakes here. Does he look for it? No, he stays behind, but keeps it nice and close. They make the way through the hairpin. As they do, in fact, Wyborn making a little bit of a mill out of the hairpin, and while we stay with this battle just a little bit longer as they head up towards turn number 3, defence in the middle of the road, and Smith has to stay on the outside here, and heading into the braking zone for turn 3, and no change at the moment as they roll off the corner. But looking from them to a little bit further back in the AM class, we've got Sean Gaffney and Steinhoff Sani running those down, the 2 BMW M4 drivers, as they make the way out of turn number 3 now, down towards 4. Gaffney there having a bit of a poor run compared to Steinhoff Sani, but the key point being the simulation motorsport driver from Scotland, able to defend it quite well. It's quite an easy place to defend into turn number 4. If you hold that inside line, unless your opponent's got a huge overspeed on you out of 3, and then again Gaffney taking a nice line through 3 and able to keep that speed and making their way up towards turn number 10. Down they go right now, and everybody stays where they are in the status quo. But as they do, meanwhile, Wyborn versus Smith continues here in the battle for the AM lead. It's going to be Smith on the inside into 11, but after nets they go, elbows out between the 2 of them. Well, it's going to be a bit bitter now as they make their way through the left-hander, and Wyborn holds on, and well, I think there we could be starting to see a little bit of a rivalry for the season in the AM class. If these two carry on like this, you love to see it up to a point, and hopefully they don't escalate any further. But there's no worry about a little bit of an elbows out race, but right now Wyborn and Smith definitely started to knock shades out one another, and as they make their way down the start finish straight this time, will there be a change, or will it stay the same as they come down towards turn number 1? It takes an eternity to get to the end of the straight, but it's felt as though it's gone very quickly to get to the midpoint of the race, as now we've got just under 22 minutes to go, plus the final lap. Wyborn defends on the inside once again with Smith on the outside. Smith getting the nose ahead on the braking, but then has to turn through and cut it back. Meanwhile, Vitzelin behind the pro driver here is now starting to approach this, and is probably looking at them thinking, can you two politely get a move on and settle your differences, because I've got a race to try and run. And well, for Vitzelin, he's got John Doble, the 3rd place AM driver, behind him, so Vitzelin's a little bit out of position right now, and I think having to worry about trying to carve his way through. But as they make the way up through turns 4 and 5, meanwhile we do look for our battling AM leaders to a bit further up the road, and in particular to Matt Strand, who has got Bevan Thompson behind in the battle for P7 in the pro class here. They're battling also for P18 overall as they make their way through, and they're Strand giving you a demonstration. Now you leap over the curb at turn number 10 with the 2 right wheels going briefly off terra firma for a small moment as they make their way through the right-hander up towards next bend now, and Will Thompson has been staying with him for the best part of what has been the last 5 to 6 laps. No change really between them. Both drivers are in the Porsche 992 and both find an equal measure of one another, but it does look as though with the speed they're both running at this point in time, Thompson may be gaining a little bit more strategic levity in the fact he will be running that toe and therefore able to save some fuel. But we've got more pit stops occurring. We've got Mark Davison and also Casper Tunstead into the pit lane as I look at my quarantine move window. Also got Alvarez there coming into the pits, albeit Alvarez a lap down after an instant earlier on. And right now Strand versus Thompson as they make the way up to top speed here, albeit Thompson just staying there, and it does seem that Thompson is opting to take the strategic approach to this race. Meanwhile, further back in the AM class, we do see here the battle for what is P6 in class between Simon Hartley, who's the attacker of the and the defender of Steinar Sani, you see on the left of the picture there, albeit with Hartley being obscured by Gaffney's car as they make the way on through. Behind them they do have Robert Armstrong starting from the back of the grid, and as they make the way on down, it's going to be a potential move here from Hartley. Can't quite find it, however, as meanwhile it's Satinda Dinsa who looks to try and go around the outside. His fellow TE Sim Sport driver, albeit backs it off there, and oh goodness me, Simon Hartley with contact with Robert Armstrong. I think two drivers trying to share the same tile of space, and in the end Simon Hartley coming off the worst for it as the Mercedes really just able to use his bulk to get on through as they make the way on through. And meanwhile, further behind, having taken pit stops, Chris Constable and Casper Tunstead battling for position right now in the Pro class. P11 in Pro, at least on circuit, but where this actually plays out or prevails on paper from strategy, we're not quite sure. We believe it's inside the top 10 around P7, P8, but it does look as though Tunstead getting ahead there in what was a bit of road manoeuvring as they make the way through. Damien Lobbits into the pit lane from what was at the time P2 in the elite class, so he's decided enough's enough, which means Sherwood and Rosev are staying out there out of the top three. We'll keep our eyes on that off camera, and as meanwhile Chris Constable here tries to come on back, the UKSimRacing Moss driver tucks in and not quite able to make a comeback here to turn number 10, but perhaps right now discretion is the better part of valor, and he needs to think about the bigger picture, which is would it be better to stay behind his rival and for them to save time battling, and instead focus on trying to leapfrog other pro drivers who've yet to pit. See if the patience plays out. They've got the insight and Team Daniel Pay's mind. Pay's will be the one they'll be watching out for as the old dudes in cars drive will try and make headway, and been up inside the top 5 when he came into the pit. Now down in P13. I think he feels as though there's a lot of time out there to be remade as he makes his way out to the right-hander, but as he does, and on towards the start for this straight, from them we look to Stuart Pearson. It's Line Steady Racing drive on the right, your picture in the BMW M4, and then side by side here with, I do believe, and that is Paul Joseph Clist. Clist defending on the inside there in the Porsche, and as they make the way onto the brakes, it's going to be tight here on the run through. Pearson opting to go all the way round. Clist, to be fair, not too confident in carrying the speed out the corner, and having to also respect the pace that Pearson has achieved. And as they make the way out towards turn number 3, Pearson's going to get the move done there. A classic pass around the outside, great respectful racing between them, and now Paul Joseph Clist will have the pressure of Ricky Pink catching up behind him as the Olympus eSports driver tries to press on there through turns 4 and 5. Keep in mind this trio have yet to pit, of course, so therefore they are a little bit out of position relative to the overall field, but they're enjoying the battling all the same as Pink now looks around the outside of Clist into turn number 6. On Clist there is just simply going to occupy the inside space and say that doesn't work, and indeed if you're going to go around the outside there, you do need to avoid going a little bit deeper than that, and indeed Pink there overextending the braking zone slightly, but still staying within arm's reach as they make their way in towards turn number 10. As they charge their way through the right-hander and uphill they begin their ascent. Meanwhile, we do look from them to a battle right towards the front of the field, and this is Ryan Davies versus Casper Brotner. Now, it's between two drivers in two different classes, but this is quite an important battle in the fact that Brotner right now is only effectively 5 seconds off Aaron McGregor, the pro class leader, and Brotner very eager to try and make some headway, but Ryan Davies really putting the cork in the bottle in terms of that progression right now, and I think Brotner eager to make this move. I wonder where Brotner's going to be coming into the pits at the end of this lap if he can't make this pass happen. He's losing a lot of time, and the relative pace between McGregor and Brotner at the moment would actually suggest that Brotner is the faster driver at this stage in the race in clear air, and will Brotner then coming through, and I think Davies realising they're only losing time when they're squabbling with one another, albeit the next driver coming up behind, Davies will not be letting through, and that will be Peter Cox who gets close behind as they make the way out to turn number 10 and up towards 11th. The simple reason Cox is in the elite class, much like Davies, as they make the way on towards nets. As they head uphill ever more so, a little bit further behind them, they have Chris Kirkland, who is trying to push on here, currently P3 in the pro class, and yet to take a pit stop, and he's flashing his lights there to Marvin Cruz, the AM driver who has pitted P12 in class, and I think trying to get the message through to Cruz, which is, look, I'm coming up behind you, there's going to be some blue flags waving, I'm just letting you know that via mail order that I'm going to be there. Indeed, a nice early warning is always good, but meanwhile, into the pit lane, a big moment here in the elite class battle for the win of the race. It is Eric Rosev and also Sam Sherwood, and Sherwood has closed up massively under pit entry, and well, what about Damien Lobbit? That's the big question. With Heckelgestad, Joe Noonan, I think most drivers now are pushing to the limit of the fuel tank. That 50% fuel tank changing things up for this season. But where is Lobbit? Well, Damien Lobbit right now is making his way out to the final corner. So the Symphony Esports driver with Nathan Scott behind. Keep in mind that Nathan Scott has yet to pit. So therefore, do not be deceived by the fact Scott's made up time, but he's not made up that much time. And as they make their way down the start-finish straight, well, as we do see, with Lobbit charging on down, Rose have made his way out the pit lane, and as he does, Sam Sherwood immediately behind. We look to the blimp camera here. Where is Lobbit? That's the question. Well, there's Sherwood versus Rosev, and then Lobbit's just behind. Lobbit's not been able to make the undercut work. The gap has opened up to 1.3 seconds. It was worth a shot, but I think in the end, leading track position was key, and Eric Rosev continues to theoretically hold the lead of this race, presuming, of course, that every driver in front who's yet to pit does not come out ahead. And as they make their way down through turns 4 and 5, it looks though Eric Rosev right now in control of this race. Sam Sherwood keeping him as honest as possible, and then Damien Lobbit is an outside shot here as they make their way in towards turn number 6. That's not to say Lobbit can't win this one, but he's got to now make up quite a bit of a deficit of 1.6 seconds, which doesn't sound like much, but in this class of racing, it is a lifetime to try and make up. As meanwhile, we look further back here to the battle for third place in the AM class, albeit on track, not based on strategy. And Satinder Deanser here, the season's Toa driver, looking for a potential run versus Stuart Pearson. As meanwhile, Mark Davison cuts his way out the inside of the Olympus Esports driver of what is called Joseph Bliss, and these guys all negotiating one another. And this is the nasty part of strategy as well. You start to enter this phase, we've got a lot of drivers who are further down the order who've yet to pit, and you come out and pit right into this pit, so you've got to get past them, not lose time, and make time on your rivals who've yet to pit in front of you. And this is where we start to see races won or lost based on the strategy. And therefore, I think anybody who's deciding to stay out long in the top 20 of the field is really picking the right call right now, because a lot of drivers have been affected by tripping over other drivers. We do see Casper Tunstead there trying to go around the outside of Cliff, but he goes to the inside now, full team. And as they make their way up the hill, well, the Danishman here will finally get it done for Pete Sim Racing. He's got the pressure growing behind from Chris Constable, and Constable back comes through with Tunstead. And as they charge on, you can see there, I do think Cliff making his way into the pit lane, opting to pull off line nice and early to signal or signpost to you that he's not going to be battling anymore as they make their way up towards turn number 1. Albeit I think the message not quite going to Cy Anthony, who decides then to switch back into the racing line. As they make their way in towards turn number 1, it is going to be Science here, looks to move on. Constable will be thinking to himself, well, I've only just had an opportunity to look at the back of Tunstead's car, and now we'll be seeing the Symphony car, the Welshman there taking the place and trying to make some further headway in P12 of the elite class currently. But as they make their way through, we've now only got top three drivers in this field of Pete Scott, Aspal and Darren Sharples, who are yet to pit. Otherwise, in terms of pit stops, everybody else has either made or is currently making their one stop for today. As we do bring out the overall standings once again, your top 35 on the left hand side of your screen, and you can definitely see now the gaps emerging between drivers and also little pockets of battling between drivers. As meanwhile, Neil Smith here versus John Doble, and John Doble has come alive since the pit stop as he looks to get the move done there versus Smith into turn 3. He gets ahead, and John Doble right now, well, I'm not quite sure where this pace has come from. I can tell you one thing, the Tiki Supersport driver may have just been saving it up on the first stint and looking to see where Smith and what was Wyborn were to one another, as Wyborn still having some connectivity issues, but Smith trying to come back here at Doble as they make the way into turn number 6 through the left-hander, and as they make the way onwards towards turn at number 10, well, this battle right now has gone the way of Doble, at least for the time being, as meanwhile we are hearing that Rosev, Sherwood and Lobbit have come through to take the top 3. Resorts P4, Peter Cox coming out the pit lane just behind Heckel Gestad and Aaron McGregor there, as you can see on the board. So Cox's strategy working out nicely for him to enable him to move to P6 in the elite class. But meanwhile, Smith here now comfortably clear of with Levin Rotner, as we do see Alan Levin, Casper Rotner batting position behind, and this is effectively for them what is P11 in the pro class as they make their way on through. But as they do, we look back to the class standings there, and Alan Levin right now not quite close enough to look for a move, but definitely eager to try and make something work versus Rotner, but he just can't seem to find a way to completely knock the place open. They make their way down towards turn number 1. We've still got just over 10 minutes of racing to go, and Levin's now going to have a look here with the V10 Audi engine, the Lamborghini Huracan Evo GT3, building all the way up here, getting ready to battle on the brakes, taking the inside approach. But then again, Brockner will have the brakes on the Porsche as they make the way under retardation now into turn number 1. Lever goes all in. Brockner says, I can do it too, goes a bit deeper. But the problem with that is he cost himself the exit, and Lever's going to get the power down much earlier here as they make the way out to the corner and gets the move done. But P11 will Brockner come back him a little bit later on the lap. We'll have to wait and see, but right now Lever with a smooth move gets it done. But as they make the way in towards turns 4 and 5, meanwhile we look from them to a bit further down the order, and this is Rob Armstrong for UKSimRacing Moss, who right now is trying to pick his way past Brandon Hay for P14 in the Pro class. And as they roll the way up through turns 4 and 5, well, the gap between these two, it's the closest it's been for some time. Albeit Armstrong goes a little bit deep there through turn number 5, and the Mercedes with that medium to high speed understeer, which is another one of its weaknesses. It's just trying to find its way onto the back of the BMW M4 of Hay as they make the way down. And as they charge all the way through, not quite able to get the move done this time. I think Brandon Hay at the moment just not taking too much of the pressure that Armstrong is trying to exhibit on him. If anything, Armstrong being made to push more and more. But as they make the way on down, we look to Darren Sharples and Ryan Walker. It's Walker up the inside of Sharples, and a satellite racing driver from Scotland. He wants to clear Sharples, who's P2 in the Pro class, because Ryan Walker, P10 in the League class, has got other ideas, which is he wants to hunt down Joe Newman, who you see in the foreground of the camera. He's going past our cameraman as they make the way into turn 3. But Ryan Walker definitely having a good start to proceedings today, having started P14 in class and made his way up to P10 in class, 11 places gained in terms of his overall position. And right now, the number 95 driver, I think, feels as though there's a few more places to be gained before the end of this race as he comes on through. Meanwhile, we do look from them to your race leader in the Pro class of Aaron McGregor, the ProTech Motorsport driver there. Let's not forget he does exist on circuit, albeit he's very lonely on circuit at the moment. But behind you then have Peter Cox, the elite driver. P6 has got Ryan Davies closing on him as the two Porsche drivers make the way through next bend. Cox goes a bit deep there, and that mistake is going to set Davies up with a potential move here on the start-finish straight. But speaking of potential moves, here are your race leaders overall and in the elite class. Eric Rosev is the lead car, Sam Sherwood behind, and will these two right now still 1.6 seconds clear of Damien Lobbit, and Sherwood staying behind Rosev there, interesting enough. I wonder whether Sherwood feels as though now's not the right time to go for the move. Perhaps they're both thinking the same thing, which is we want to have a battle for the lead, but we don't want Lobbit to get involved, and therefore we may as well work together. And as they make the way up towards turn number 3, if that's the logic they're going for, it's a gamble in the fact that if Lobbit does start to close up on the pair, alternative Rosev decides just to gradually, very sneakily back the pair of them towards Lobbit. It will open the battle to a three-way battle, and Rosev may be able to break away. But it's going to be interesting to see how these guys use their pairing together and whether they both think the same thing or not as they make their way through turn at number 6 and 7. But meanwhile, from them to a little bit further up the order, down the order I should say, in terms of relative positions, we do look to John Doble, who's looking to try and take the AM lead of Jack Wyborn, albeit with the internet connectivity issues that Wyborn is experiencing. He's there and he's not there, and this must be a little bit challenging for Doble right now to gather where his rival is going to be under braking into turn number 1. But once you see the driver initially go in a position, you can normally take a shot there, and there Wyborn goes only deep, and this could be for the lead of the AM class as Doble takes the Kinker 2. We're not quite sure where Wyborn is at the moment. He may re-materialise, or is that Wyborn's race done and dusted as Doble comes on through? And in fact, I think that may be a retirement from Wyborn just as the move was being made. Well, the TE6 Sport Kibby driver there taking the lead of the AM class in quite an interesting fashion, albeit a classic move. And there is Wyborn. He reappears, and Neil Smith right now battling with Wyborn as they come through turn 6 and 7 side by side. Well, John Doble definitely has found his way on through, and Wyborn there lose now versus Smith as they make the way down towards turn number 10. Smith now regaining, but I'm not sure if Smith has got enough pace to take on Doble. Wherever the pace was for Doble in qualifying, it's absolutely come alive in the race here. But meanwhile, Smith now has got Casper Brockner behind him, and Brockner wants to get through because of Kirkland as they come through turn number 11. But Smith once again having to fight. There's a little bit of a wobble there from Casper Brockner. Those rear tyres, I think, starting to let go with the tyre degradation building. And as they make their way through turn at number 13 up towards Panasonic at 14 they go. And Smith right now really having to make a choice. Does he try to chase down Doble and let Brockner go in the process, or does he defend P2 and hope that's going to be where he finishes if Wyborn's not able to come back through? Well, as they make their way through, Wyborn has made it back into P3 in the class. as they charge their way down the start finish straight. 7 minutes still to go in this race, plus the final lap. We do have overtime in effect, and as they make their way onwards towards turn number 1, we look from them to the battle for P2 in the Pro Class. And this is Casper Tunstead, who has got the pressure of St. Anthony behind, but he wants to chase after the guy in front of him, who is Darren Sharples, as they roll the way off the turn 6 hairpin. As they make their way down towards turn number 10 at the moment, St. Anthony trying to find his way on through, and we're looking for it there instead, not quite close enough to go for it. Instead has to park the car behind and opt to wait until later on the lap. Alternatively, the start finish line run towards turn number 1. That's probably where he will get the movement, since it's going to go deep here, and in doing so he's going to open the door to St. Anthony, but too wide up into net. It's possible, but this costs you a lot of time. Instead does defend, and he opens up the gap to Sharples now to 1.5 seconds with that mistake in turn number 11. Added to by the fact he's defending and battling, and meanwhile Ryan Mole sneaks up the inside there. All the way is Chris Constable and says, okay, right, I can see Science now, I'm going to hunt him. Constable trying to come back here, Mole's defend. Constable's going to have to switch back to the outside now. So the elite drivers here eager to carve their way through, but the pro drives just as eager to say, no you don't. And as they make their way down towards turn number 1, Ryan Mole says, yes I do, as they head on towards the braking zone here, albeit he's not really quite close enough to be able to try and entrance and what be a move on St. Anthony, but St. Anthony for turn is going to look for a move here versus the Tunstead as they go into their pin, and their Tunstead goes a little bit deep, but I think the Peak Sim Racing driver lets the place go gradually, and now for what will be Ryan Moles flashes lights there to say to Tunstead, look, just let me go, I want St. Anthony, as they make their way to turn number 3, but the message doesn't get through, or Tunstead chooses not to listen to it as they make their way down towards turn number 4 or 5, and they stay exactly where they are as Daniel Pays now gets it into this long train of Porsches as they make their way on through. You've also got behind them Aaron Beaver in the mix here, and effectively we have got what is a 4-way fight for P3 in the Pro Class that's building up to a crescendo as they make their way through the hairpin. And well, right now Aaron Beaver behind, who we jump on board with, the privateer from America in the number 57 Audi. Not too many Audis on the field. What has been the 2015 rendition of the German machine. It may be the oldie, but it's still a classic and it gives a punch. And as they make their way up towards turn number 11, right now the Americans really just trying to keep those Porsches in check as he rolls his way through 11. Very smooth driving, to be fair, and I think looking to see where things go wrong as Mole's very tying up the inside there of what's Casper Tunstead through Net's bend. And I think Moles has got the move done, albeit he's had to be a little bit forceful with it, but sometimes you have to get a bit of elbows out to make it happen. And right now in the long charge they go down the start for the straight, and as they charge their way down, still 4 minutes between them, and what is effectively at least another 3 laps on the cards. My mathematics is correct, and where our leaders are in circuit at the moment, maybe 2 laps in fact, as they go on to 1 more. But it does look as though Aaron Beaver not quite able to close up, just not enough straight line speed in the Audi versus the Porsche in front as they make their way in towards turn number 1. But as they all serpentine slightly behind the lead car and heading in towards the right-hander, Tunstead they're defending well. Constable still looking for that potential move, but cannot find a way on through. And meanwhile, we have had a change of position up towards the front of the field. It's happened off camera. Team Year One's Reece Saunders has found his way past Damien Lobbit. The two of them were coming together very gradually, but over the last lap or 2 in particular, for Reece Saunders, the last lap was a 36.42. Lobbit has a 36.69. The pace seems to be falling away from Lobbit to a degree. I wonder where he's underfueled the car slightly. Alternatively, he's having to nurse a bit of tire degradation here because Saunders right now has really pushed on, albeit he's not quite on the pace of our top 2. The top 2 drivers, Eric Rosen and Sam Sherwood, are still lapping in the 35s, as are Thomas Aspel and Joe Newman further down the order in what is P8 and P9 in the elite class respectively. But the point being here is we do seem to see a lot of drivers now moving into the 36s and 37s in their classes. Meanwhile, the leaders are staying in the higher portion of the 35s or 36s, depending on which class they're in. But as the race presses on, and Saunders right now makes his way down towards turn number 1, we do look from them to the battle that's raging between Jack Wyborn, albeit we are losing Wyborn every so often here, and Neil Smith. Wyborn has found his way back past Neil Smith, and right now Smith is having to deal with Kirkland. Chris Kirkland there in the Pro Class looking for a move around the outside. Smith firmly shuts the door and says no. Just leave me alone and let me focus on chasing down Wyborn. Albeit I think right now Kirkland very eager to get on through, and there's contact on the roof of Smith's car. Kirkland there taking a little bit of an opportune move up the inside, and well, Smith tries to get the car off the road and clear the road space for everyone. That is going to be an absolutely frustrating moment for Neil Smith, who looked to be of course for a podium, but in the end it's all in tatters. But the thing he can take from today is he's got top 3 pace in the AM class. He just doesn't need it to go astray. But as we do look from the misfortunes of the Briton, back to Casper Tunstead, the Dane here, trying to put on a colossal effort to hold on to the final spot of the pro podium, with Chris Constable and also Daniel Pace and Aaron Beaver behind, as this long pack of 4 cars, the quartet, all slide their way in towards turn number 3 once again today. But Tunstead right now really putting up the stoic defence after letting the elite drivers go. I think he was wondering whether the elites would find their way through, and with it the pros as well, but he's been able to manage it, and now only a little bit further to go. But meanwhile, as they make the way through, we look back to your race leader, Great Rosev, and as he charges his way down the start finish straight, bobbing and weaving here like a boxer, if you will. But we've only got a minute left. That means we go on to the final lap. We go on to a 28th and final lap here today at Fuji Speedway in Japan. And right now, Rosev under pressure from Sherwood all the way down towards turn number 1. And the problem here is in the fact that gap of 4 attempts, if Sherwood's able to maintain, if not close that distance a little bit more, as in fact Rosev goes deep, then we ride on board the gearbox of the race leader. Then when they come out the final corner, it will be a drag race to the finish line, and we'll keep in mind of course drivers are only allowed to make 1 move to defend effectively. Rosev will have to pick his right time to go for that defensive move, and it'll be all about who's able to carry the speed up towards the start finish line. And keep in mind, in fact, it's registered as being halfway along the start finish straight. That is going to be also almost a half-mile drag race, and well, that is a lot of time to build speed. But as they make their way out to turn number 6 in towards 10, Rosev right now has got the gap back up to 4 attempts as they come down, and Sherwood falling back a little bit. I think this may be the calm before the storm, as Sherwood has been looking threatening all day as they make their way through the quarterback. It's a really good run there. Sparks right from the rear of Rosev's car. Into the move they go, and as they go into turn 11, Sherwood sends it from far back and finds it. I don't think Rosev knew it was coming, but right now surely he's going to respond as they make the way towards turn number 13. Sherwood slides. The tyres there are too hot as they make the way through 13 to 14. It's running to Panasonic corner, and as they do, well, both drivers opt to take their preferred line. Sherwood goes very defensive. Rosev goes to the long line to take the maximum possible speed onto the start finish straight. It's going to be a drag race all the way to the line. 2.5 attempts. Sherwood pulls to the middle of the road, gets the toe broken briefly. He's still got another second or 2 to the line, but I think he's going to do it, and Sam Sherwood will take the checkered flag in the first race of the season with a sensational move at the finish ahead of Eric Rosev P2, Reece Saunders P3 I should say, Damien Lovett P4, Hegelstad P5, Aaron McGregor comes on through to take the pro win by 20 seconds in here. My goodness, that is an achievement and a half for the ProTech Motorsport driver ahead of Ryan Davies, and then it'll be Peter Cox behind, followed by Thomas Asphaug, and then a little bit further back from them, Joe Newman, Ryan Walker and Darren Sharples will come through to take P2 of the UKSimRacing prize in the pro class ahead of Casper Tunstead, who despite the aggravation intentions of his rivals holds on to the final spot of the pro podium. And then very, very shortly we will start to see Matt Strand cross the line ahead of Bevan Thompson, with Richard Jones there completing the run to P9 in the pro class. But John Doble comes out the final corner, and I'm not going to quite believe it, ladies and gentlemen, much like at Detroit, that pace has come alive in the second half of the race, and he's going to do it for Tiki Simsport Kimi. He charges the checkered flag. The Tiki Simsport garage is going absolutely crazy right now, and John Doble takes the first and win of the season ahead of Jack Wyborn P2, who crosses the line, and then it will be Stein Orsani who rounds off the AM podium there for Racing Lab Esports AM2 ahead of Thomas Barjak, will be separated with Casper Brotner, and it'll be Brandon Hay who finishes P13 in the pro class ahead of Rob Armstrong, with then Mark Johnson following on through. We've still got a couple more drivers battling to the line as we see here the battle of P7 in the AM class. We've got Paul Joseph for Olympus Esports holding on to the position at the end ahead of Sean Gaffney and Simon Andre Livingston, and then we do have a couple of drivers to come on through, including Marvin Cruz, and it will be, I believe, then Alan Lever who is the last finisher on the lead lap, albeit we will have confirmation of that very shortly, ladies and gentlemen. But I believe now everybody has finished the race. We have had a few drivers finish a lap down, but what a race it has been today. And for Sam Sherwood, well, what an overtake to take the win at this corner at turn number 11. I didn't think Rose ever could see it coming, and indeed Sherwood absolutely made it count, albeit he overheated the tyres and almost lost it at next bend only 2 corners later, but he got the car stopped, managed to manage the tow, and with that has definitely made an overtake which could be important later on in the season. For Eric Rosev, however, he won't be too annoyed at that. He'll be proud of the effort he's put up today, and he's definitely put himself up there as one of the major early favourites, much like Sherwood. And meanwhile, in the Pro class, what a run from Aaron McGregor. And the last time we saw Aaron McGregor on the grid, back in Season 9 in the AM class, he started off this way in the AM class, which was to finish the race at least 10 seconds clear of his rivals. He's done it again here today, taking the win in the Pro class by 20 seconds over Darren Sharples. And well, then again, this could just be a blip, but I wonder whether the ProTech Motorsport driver from Scotland right now may already be thinking about what's to come next in round at number 2, and whether he's able to get it done in the Pro class again. Keep in mind, of course, our classes are not necessarily finalised by default. They may change between now and the next couple of rounds. And we'll have to wait and see if there's some class chopping or whether they will stay in the same class. And meanwhile, John Doble already in the pit lane, but a great achievement from him for what was the AM Tiki Simsport Toa team. But as all drivers make their way into the pit lane, let's take you through those race results subject to any stewards' inquiries. And here they are. After 45 minutes of racing, what's been an absolutely fascinating round 1 of 9 in the UKSimRacing GT3 League Season 11, as brought to you on the Premier Sim Racing platform iRacing, only available on PC. Sam Sherwood taking the overall win for ProTech Motorsport, 1.5 tenths clear of Eric Rosa for Racing Lab Esports AM. P3 to round off the overall podium, Reece Saunders, and with that the elite podium for Team Year 1, with that late move on Damien Lobbett being absolutely pivotal in his success, with the Simon Esports driver showing great pace in the first half of the race, but falling down the order in the second half in terms of pace, but still battling onto a P4. He'll be happy with that, the 666 driver. And Heckel Gestad completing the top 5 there. The reigning elite champion for Ignium Motorsport in the number 1 car. The BMW not quite on the pace here today, but still a top 5 in the cards. Aaron McGregor, the Pro Class winner, taking P6 there for ProTech Motorsport, 4 seconds off of the top 5, but in return 3 seconds clear of Ryan Davies, with Tiki Simsport Kimmy's drive holding off at Peter Cox to the line, and then the UKSimRacing Clark drive being followed up by Thomas Aspal for Racing Lab Esports AM2, and Empire Motorsports Joe Newman, who completed the top 10. Best of the rest, Ryan Walker P11, and now we'll focus on, in terms of overall positions, the podium finishers of the other classes and also retirees. And as we can see there, Darren Sharples taking P12 for UKSimRacing Price, and with that second place in the Pro class, and then 3 places later, Casper Tunstead, who put an absolute valiant effort into holding on to P15, ahead of Chris Constable, Daniel Pays and Aaron Beaver, and with that taking the Pro podium P3 position, and therefore the Pro podium made up of McGregor, Sharples, and also Tunstead. Looking further down the order, outside of the top 20, we can see in P25 there, John Doe taking the AM class win for Tiki Simsport Kimmy, when an absolutely fantastic drive there to finish 3 seconds clear at Jack Wyborn at the finish, with the TPA Racing driver's connection being uncertain, but one thing that was certain was his pace here today, and holding onto the second spot of the podium, and then Steinar Sani for Racing Lab Esports AM2, completing the AM podium of Doble, Wyborn and Sani by taking P3 in class. But looking further down the overall finishing positions now, we can see most of our drivers able to finish on the lead lap, as we do see there that battle between Brandon Hay, Rob Armstrong, Mark Johnson and Kerry Corcoran really taking place in the battle for P31, just outside the top 30. And then we can see, in terms of our drivers who finished a lap down in the end, Alan Level was the last driver to finish on the lead lap, P41 for UKSimRacing Price, and then Satinder Deensa finishing a lap down there, P42 for Tiki Simsport Tower, as did Stephen Parker Hamilton, Simon Hartley, BJ Alvarez, Ricky Ping finishing 3 laps down behind Alvarez's 2 laps down. And then we did see early retirements for Rudy Avitsland, albeit we're classified as a finisher, as he did complete over half the race distance. Andy Jones will be our sole non-finisher for today, as he was only able to complete what was 12 laps of racing and not able to make the half race distance, as he retired after what was 12 laps and did not finish with 16 to go. For the iRacing DCW race driver, no, there's still plenty to go later on this season, and today may have just been a blip. But now coming on to the individual class standings. We can see here in the elite class, first and foremost, Sam Sherwood taking the win for ProTech Motorsport by 1.5 tenths, ahead of Racing Lab Esports and Eric Rosev, and Reece Saunders completing the podium there for Team Year 1. And definitely one to watch out for, Reece Saunders. We saw plenty of promise from him in the late stages of Season 10, albeit some blunders with regards to strategy in terms of fuel going into the car. Many of you will remember Okiyama when he ran out of fuel with a lap to go, but still made it count today, ahead of Damien Lovitt P4, and then Ignium Motorsports Heckel Gestad completed the top 5. Ryan Davies in a bit of a hit and miss race day for Tiki Simsport Kimmy, but staying one step ahead of Peter Cox from UKSimRacing Clark, and then Thomas Aspal, Joe Newman and Ryan Walker completing your top 10, with Ryan Walker battling his way from P14 in the class to P10 and finished off those top 10 positions. Ryan Moles best of SP11, the ProTech Motorsport driver, starting a way down and then to recover his way into the race, just pipping at sight anti to line there. You can see between the two of them, only 200ths at line. Then Mark Davison, Nathan Scott and Andy Jones completing standings, with Andy Jones being the sole retiree. Coming on to the Pro class. And the story here being that Aaron McGregor taking an emphatic win for Protect Motorsport, that 20-second advantage over Darren Sharple's P2 for UKSimRacing Price, and Casper Tunstead a further 3 seconds behind. But Tunstead there only holding on to P3 by a gap in the end of no more than 2 seconds between himself and Chris Constable, Daniel Payes and Aaron Beaver. And definitely right now we do seem to have a pro class that's fully alive in the battle for the podium spots, and it's great to see. Matt Strand, P7 for Racing Lab Esports and Free, and indeed holding off there Bevan Thompson, with Richard Jones for Slow and Steady Racing finishing P9 ahead of Alexander Tremino Michelson, with Racing Lab Esports and Drive having a bit of a quiet race after the pit stops and round off the top 10. Chris Kirkland, best of the rest for Downforce Racing P11 in what was not to be his day today, but the fact he battled hard all the way through the race, but at the same time was interrupted a number of times when he was trying to push into the top 10 by other classes drivers on different strategies, and Casper Brotner the same there in P12 for Old Dudes in Cars. Brandon Hay, Rob Armstrong and Mark Johnson completed the Pro top 15, with Kerry Kokorin, Anne Lever and Rudy Avitzlan completed the top 18, and Avitzlan there finishing 6 laps down in the end, and our last finisher in the Pro class. Then finally coming on to the AM class here. Not to be forgotten about, John Doe will take in the class win by 2.5 seconds for TT Simsport Kimi over TPA racer Jack Wyborn, with that absolutely scintillating pace in the second half of the race, with Wyborn losing out to a degree and Steinar Sani finishing P3 for Racing Lab Esports AM2 in the hunt for a podium all the way through, but also capitalising on the instant which saw was Neil Smith drop out of the podium places. Thomas Barjack finishing P4 there for the Privateer, 11 seconds clear of Stuart Pearson for Slow and Steady Racing, who came towards the field, the front of the field towards the end, picking up the places through consistency, and Neil Smith, an unfortunate P6 for the disaster-prone racing driver, but you'll know that disaster was not necessarily down to him, or that at least will be the way he'll feel about it, and he'll be looking forward to round number 2 and what he can do in the number 19 BMW. Paul Joseph Cliss, P7 there for Olympus Esports, had a Simulation Motorsport, with Sean Gaffney at P8 ahead of Simon Andre Livingston, and then Marvin Cruz at P10 for Bike Racing, completing all the AM drives who finished on the lead lap, with then Satinder Deansa, best the rest P11 for TT Simsport Tower, a lap down, but ahead of TPA Racing Stephen Parker Hamilton, with Simon Hartley P13 for TT Simsport Tower, then 2 laps down at BJ Alvarez, the Team Sim Racing Chicago, and last but not least 3 laps down, Ricky Ping from Aspire Racing Team. But with that, ladies and gentlemen, that concludes our run through all the finishing positions, and what a thrilling race it has been for our first race of the season. And very shortly, we will be cutting away to get ready for our post-round interviews. Any drivers who are available, albeit we are almost a week after the racing. We do know a couple of drivers who are volunteering their time to talk a little bit about the race and how much they recollect of it. But just before we do step away, we'd just like to say to you that if you have been enjoying the racing today and ever wondered how you can support UK Sim Racing, did you know there's a quick way to do so via our affiliates? For we at UK Sim Racing are affiliated with multiple sim racing and real-world motorsport companies, including Swello Meta Sim Racing Coaching and Demon Tweaks. And if you head to our website, and that's uksimracing.co.uk today, that website will appear on screen as of now. You can see a Discord link in the top right corner of your screen. Now, why would you want to be part of our Discord? Well, firstly, we're an absolutely awesome community, a little bit modest perhaps I should say, but at the same time, we're an awesome community, and I'm not afraid to say it, in the fact we have a load of like-minded individuals, not just in the United Kingdom, but around the world, who all absolutely love sim racing. And if you ever want to be on the grid for any one of our series, you do need to be part of our Discord. It's a mandatory rule. But more importantly, for you as a consumer, if you're ever looking to make a purchase through one of our affiliates, there are a number of discount codes from our affiliates only available on our Discord, and if you use one of those codes as part of your purchase, you get a discount, which is absolutely brilliant for you as the consumer. And we at UK Sim Racing will really the community win, because every purchase made using an affiliate code ends up leading to a kickback to us, and we as a non-profit organisation will put all of that money we make from affiliate purchases back into the community to fund future series, including future editions of the GT3 League, also the Porsche Cup, and plenty more planned for 2023. So do remember, a little purchase can go a long way in supporting UK Sim Racing, but I can tell you one thing that's going to go a long way right now. It's a bit of a breather for me as we get ready for our post-round interviews. We'll be back in approximately 10 to 15 minutes time. Don't go anywhere, you won't want to miss them. Alrighty, ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, it's time now for our post-round interviews. And today we do have two drivers available for interview. And we've got both Ryan Moles in the Elite class, the Pro Tech Motorsport driver who had a challenging race to say the least, and we'll get to hear his story very shortly. And we'll also be hearing from John Doble in the AM class, the TT SimSport Kimi driver who battled his way through from P6 in class to take a resounding win. But without further ado, I'm immediately joined up by Ryan Moles. Good evening to you, Ryan, and well, it was a challenging race out there at Fuji for yourself. You tried to make the most of it by looks of things, but ended up being embroiled in quite a few battles with other drivers of other classes. Is it a bit of a write-off in Japan?
Hi, Paul. Yeah, you could say that in a way. It was just the fact I had an early incident after what was an okay qualifying. Like you say, it put me back towards the back of the pack, and I had to find my way back. And it was actually a decent recovery drive for myself. But yeah, I'm looking forward to Sunday to try and put everything right.
Well, indeed, a challenging one, and like you say, everything really upset by an early incident. But before we come on to what happened there and the race itself, qualifying very close up and down the field, a lot of Porsches on the grid, yourself also going for the 992. In the qualifying session, how did you feel it went around the Fuji circuit? Because this circuit is so technical in nature and mistakes are so easy to make.
Yeah, it was very difficult, to be fair, especially the last sector, with it being a lot of late apexes that you can't really see. It's hard to carry the speed through. I decided to go for to do all the laps in one go instead of putting in less fuel and going back to the pits. So I thought I'd just try and see if that would benefit me. In the first couple of laps it worked, but then I think I just started overdriving the car a little bit, made a few mistakes, and I couldn't really gain much time to make a big difference. But I was happy with a top 10 because I knew it was going to be pretty competitive, and with it being the first season back after having a season off, it was good just to know that I've still somewhat got pace with everyone else.
Well, most definitely, and we saw you really shining in terms of that season 9 a while ago and looking to come back fighting fit. And with regards to your car choice, going for the Porsche 992, the new kid on the block from Germany, what was your reason for going with this car?
It just felt really good from release, to be honest. I just really enjoyed the way that it was driving at the time, but then they did make a few updates to it, and it's not as good as it was, but it's still very nice. It was a tough choice to move away from the Audi, but yeah, though it's enjoyable.
Well, speaking of that enjoyment, it wasn't quite an enjoyable race to begin with, and well, from an early start and being knocked down the grid, just take us through what happened from your perspective.
Yeah, I can't remember what corner it was. I think it was at turn 5, what should be the chicane. I kind of got a bit sidetracked from the car in front. I felt he broke a little bit early, so I had to avoid, and I got onto the grass, and it just spun me out, which tumbled me down the order. And then moving on to the next lap at turn 1, I kind of just overshot it. Luckily, I didn't hit anyone. There was a gap there. And then it was just, I think I just got bit into my own head at that point. I was a bit annoyed at the incident. And I thought, right, I need to try and just calm myself down. I kind of just got into a focus mode, and I just had to take every lap as it came.
When in doing so, we very quickly saw you starting to battle your way in amongst a good number of pro drivers, including the likes of Casper Tunstead, Chris Constable and Daniel Pays. And with the pros not being too far off of the elite pace, it's a bit of an odd dynamic given the fact, excuse me, that you don't have, well, you see the instant there of you spinning at turn number 10 on the replay footage, but given the pro class are so close on pace, it's an odd dynamic where you've got to battle past a class of drivers who you're not fighting for in the championship, but you're fighting them on circuit regardless.
Yeah, it's a difficult one. You don't really want to interrupt what they're doing either, but at the same time, you do want to get past them, because you've got your eyes set on the elite drivers in front of you. Which towards the end of the race, I had my eyes set on Cy Anthony, and at that point, it sounds like a bad thing, but I didn't care on the kind of moves I was making. I had to get my elbows out in order to try and claw back as many positions as I can. I don't mean to do it in like a proper aggressive manner. I do try and make it fair and not disrupt what they're doing, because I know that they're also looking to gain time. So it is an interesting one, but it can be fun, but it can be annoying.
All understandable. I think anybody tuning in right now will completely sympathise with the scenario. And speaking about that battling with Si Anthony, as the race went on, we saw a lot of drivers, yourself and Si Anthony included, deciding to pit around just beyond the midpoint of the race. I have to ask, with regards to the fuel tank, now that we're running the 50% fuel tank, has that opened up the strategy a bit more from your perspective?
It has a little bit. It does give you an option to pit nice and early. And in order, especially if you have like an incident early on, so you can kind of just like have some clean air and just lap cleanly and put in some good numbers. But yeah, it definitely does open up strategy a lot, especially if you're going to start fuel saving, or if it means you might want to push a little bit more early on. It's definitely an interesting dynamic. I do try and like to go long, but I think that certain incident that I had, I thought I need to pit early and just try and undercut a lot of the cars in front of me.
Well, in playing out the undercut, we saw you having to make ground very quickly, and as we got towards the closing stage of the race, a bit of a rivalry between yourself and Si Anthony for the best of the rest position of P11 in the elite class.
Yeah, like I said earlier, I had my eyes set on him, and I thought if I can catch up, which I was looking at the timing, and it was like I was gaining lap after lap after lap. But we had obviously we had like a few pro drivers in between us, so trying to get past them. I was speaking to him earlier, and I don't think he was very happy that I was flashing him a lot, but I like to flash people because I know it gets into the heads a little bit. And yeah, it was a good battle. I got the run out of the last corner, and I just pipped him at the line. So it was nice to get that. But with the post-race stewarding, I got slapped with a -8. So that's kind of just made the whole weekend a little bit pointless. But it is what it is. We've got to move on to next week now.
Oh, indeed. Sometimes you just got to roll on it with the punches, like you say. And we'll, next time out, we make our way to Spain for the start of a double header, beginning with the Circuito de Jerez. How are you feeling for the Spanish circuit?
I'm feeling okay. It's a new track for me. I've had to learn it this week, but I think I've quickly gained pace. I don't think I'm that far off. But I do need a good result this week, especially with that penalty now. I'm aiming... I want to say a podium, but I'll be happy with a top 5.
We do look forward to seeing whether you can achieve your targets in Spain in a week's time. But just before we do let you go, is there anybody you'd like to give a shout out or a thank you to live on the broadcast this evening?
Yeah, I've got to say a big congratulations to Sam for winning. I think that's his first win. I don't know if it's his first win in class, but it's definitely his first overall win. He deserved it this weekend. And Aaron McGregor as well, he's been fantastic. And obviously, Yuri, it's good to hear your voice again, Paul, and it's good to be back racing amongst everyone else. And hopefully it's going to be an interesting season.
Oh, most definitely, and it wouldn't be the same without yourself on the grid, Ryan. It's been an absolute pleasure to have you join me in the interview room this evening. Congratulations on being able to salvage the best of the rest position of a Si Anthony right at the end, and we do look forward to seeing you back on top form in Spain as of this coming weekend.
Nice one. Cheers, Paul.
All the best. So hearing there from Ryan Moles, who really having to try and focus on the positives and what lies ahead after a difficult day at Japan, and well, being hit with a -8 point penalty post-race as well due to an incident. It's just, as he said there, really knocked the wind out of it in terms of upset the whole round 1 weekend. But sometimes that does happen in a season, and indeed you've just got to look back at it and think, right, what can I take from today and move on to the next round? And the things we've seen from Ryan Moles in today, he's got pace to be inside the elite top 10. He's got a lot of pace out there under race conditions as well, and particularly the recovery drive after the spin we saw at turn 10, plus also then outbraking himself into turn number 1. 2 major mistakes which are costly to recover from, but he found a way to recover to just being outside of the top 10 overall come the end of the race. That's an achievement in itself, and I think he is definitely going to be someone to watch out for as the ProTech Motorsport driver looks to turn things completely the right way round at what is the Jerez circuit this coming weekend. But now, as we get ready for our second interview of today, ladies and gentlemen, we'll very shortly be hearing from John Doble, the Tiki Supersport Kiwi driver who took victory in the AM class in what was an absolutely sensational run to victory. And as he gets ready to join me in the interview room, it'll be interesting to hear his thoughts on a win. I think this time he'll feel as though it's come as less a surprise and more from the hard graft. But as he gets ready to join me now, in fact, he does join me in the interview room. Good afternoon to you, John. I think you're contacting us directly from Canada, and what a race to kick off your season. A winning class, battling your way from P6 on the class grid, and showing so much pace in the second half of the race. I have to ask, could you quite believe it when you crossed the line, given the surprise win at Detroit last season?
Man, Detroit was crazy. This was a little different. I mean, Satinder and Simon put some big expectations on me this season with Daniel Pays and Mark Johnson being promoted to pro, and I finished third in AM last season. So it was a good way to get it started. I think about a third of the way through the race, we had some traffic in our battle because it was the three of us, Neil, Jack, and I, battling for the lead, and we got separated with traffic. And I started catching them back up, and I was like, I might be the fastest car in class if things can go my way. And we got lucky. I caught Neil as we were getting close to the pit stop, and I felt I was a little quicker than him, so I tried an overcut, and that paid off perfectly. And then just trying to chase Jack down at that point.
And in the run-up to all the racing today, when we saw qualifying a P6 in class in qualifying, P36 overall, it sounds as though perhaps there's a little bit more time out there for you. Just take us through how qualifying went from your perspective.
Yeah, I felt qualifying went pretty well. I don't put a lot of time or effort into really preparing for qualifying, and it's something that Ryan has kind of gotten after me a little bit for, I think. But I was kicking myself a little bit because I know there was more, because I had extra fuel in the tank, and I know there was more time there for me. I probably could have qualified second or third, just given where everybody's times were. But, you know, if you take that fuel out, maybe you don't get it. And I just like putting a solid lap on the board and then seeing where the race goes at that point.
Well, indeed, a smart approach. And as the race got underway, we saw you start to make some progress early on. As we look at the pictures right now of you trying to chase after Neil Smith in that freeway battle for the lead, like you described. And with regards to catching up, did it come as quite a rapid realisation that a win could be on the cards here? Or was it one of those gradual that we're taking one at a time, and now we're in the zone? It's the top three of us, and now we're right in that battle.
Yeah, we had the three of us there and going, okay, you know, we'll see how this plays out. This is kind of where I want to be, because my target is always to end up on the podium. And being right there with those guys and going, okay, well, I can mix it up with them. They're not that much quicker than me. I felt in practice that I was probably a fourth or fifth place car. So being able to kind of show once the race started, like, okay, we've got a little bit of speed in us. We can go see what we can do, and just trying to be in a situation where I'm not making mistakes and I'm trying to be solid, and was able to put it together.
Indeed, and it was a faultless drive in the first stint. And I have to ask, when we saw you trying to make the move with Neil Smith making the pass on Jack Wyborn, and then suddenly the drivers behind in either the elite or the pro class interfering, were there a few curse words underneath the virtual helmet? Because I can imagine you would try to get the move done at that point.
Yes, I was trying very hard to get by there, and managing the other class traffic is difficult, because, you know, they're trying to race their race and they don't want to give up the extra time, and at the same time it's like, I don't want to give up the extra time. So it's one of those situations where sometimes you just got to be a little patient and go, okay, you're not going to get it, and let's take a breather and set them up.
Oh, indeed. And speaking of setting things up, where you couldn't necessarily make the pass on circuit, at least to make it stick, it then came to the pit stops, and we saw you decide to go for a bit of a smart strategy versus your rivals and getting the jump on Neil Smith, and it was one-on-one versus Jack Wyborn.
Yeah, we were catching Neil. I felt like my best sector was really sector 3, and everybody, when they would kick out wide to get a good run, especially down the front stretch, it's like I had enough to turn underneath them. And it was always kind of had to resist that urge because you knew they weren't going to give that space for you if you went for it. They were planning to use it. Then we got around Neil into turn one as he was coming off a pit road. And a few laps later, we tracked down Jack, and he was a little bit difficult to get to because he was blinking a little bit. And I don't know if he hadn't gone wide in turn one there and I was able to get underneath him. I don't know how I was quite going to make that pass if that hadn't happened there.
Oh, indeed, a very brave moment there, like you say, with Wyborn's car blinking on off the circuit due to connectivity, but you fully committed to it and made the move stick. And from that point onwards, it looked as though there might have been a voice in your ear saying, just run away with things, John, and a 2.5 second gap at the finish was where you stood.
Yeah, I actually, later that lap where I took the lead in the braking zone to turn 15, I got a little sideways and nearly gave it all away. But I was able to keep it in the right direction and kind of refocus myself and just hit my marks, knowing that kind of the laps that I had been running had been good enough to get me here and trying to stay on that.
Was an absolutely solid drive, and when the checkered flag fell, an absolutely great feeling for yourself like you described earlier. But I have to ask, with the win from Fuji, we head to Spain for a double header this coming weekend, starting at Circuito de Jerez. How are you feeling for the charge into round number 2?
I'm actually going to miss rounds 2 and 3, so I will be back at VIR, which is probably my home track, and seeing if we can't put something together there like this.
Well, we'll definitely miss seeing you in Spain for rounds 2 and 3, and I think everybody in the Anfield might be breathing a bit of a sigh of relief, thinking, right, we've got an opportunity to score some points against one of the biggest names in the class at the very least. But we'll look forward to seeing you return at VIR. But just before we do let you go, is there anybody you'd like to give a shout out or a thank you to live on the broadcast this evening?
Yeah, gonna shout out Sam and Eric for that finish in Elite. That was fun to watch tonight. And thanks to the Tiki Sim Sport guys, Ryan, Martin, Satender, and Simon. League racing is a lot more fun when you got a bunch of guys like that to hang out with while you do it. And I've had a lot of fun here in UKSR. And Paul, your broadcasts are a great addition.
John, it's been an absolute pleasure to have you join me in the interview room. Congratulations on your win at Fuji, an absolutely brilliant drive to victory. Long may they continue, and we look forward to seeing you return in round number 4 in a couple of weeks' time at the American Circuit of Virginia International Raceway. Until then, we wish you all the best.
Thank you, Paul.
So here and there from John Doble, the AM class winner today from Tiki Simsport Kimi, and what a drive from the Canadian driver. Having started P6 in class and feeling as though there was perhaps a little bit more out there in the qualifying session, but still happy with the lap and feeling as though he went for fuel over pace and opting just to put a good set of laps on the board. A smart approach, and in seeing things come alive in the race. A couple of drives fell by the wayside early on, including the pole sitter of what was, if my memory serves me correctly, Stephen Parker Hamilton, but still you got to be in it to win it, and that's exactly where Doble was. And then what was a very tenuous three-way battle between himself, also Neil Smith, and Jack Wyborn, with Wyborn's connectivity challenges and also Doble constantly being at the back of the trio and being elbowed out by cars trying to cut their way through from other classes, then opting to switch up the strategy, go for an undercut and get past Smith, and then battling against Wyborn and being brave to position himself where he thinks Wyborn's car would not be despite the connectivity challenges. And that's how John Doble took the lead and managed to break away to take victory. It may have only been 2.5 seconds, but those 2.5 seconds at the checker flag may be a sign of something to come. And I think right now, between this round and round number 4 at VIR, all of his rivals are going to be looking to try and narrow that pace gap, for the simple reason when Doble returns, it could be another victory on the cards in round number 4. But we'll have to wait and see. So with that, ladies and gentlemen, that concludes our interviews for today. You've just heard from John Doble from Tiki Simsport Kimi in the number 77 car of the AM class, and previously our first interview in the Elite class of ProTech Motorsports, Ryan Moles in the number 18 Porsche. Congratulations to both of them on their fantastic performances today, and we look forward to seeing them out on circuit in the next round they compete in. And with that, it is now time for us to wrap up. But before we do, it's time for us to take a quick look at the scores after round number 1. And to give you an update with these results now being final, with the stewards report coming in as of yesterday, if my memory serves me correctly, we can see in the elite standings first and foremost, Sam Sherwood and Eric Rosev are tied at the top, with Sherwood and Rosev both scoring 40 points for their respective performances, keeping in mind, of course, that pole position and the fastest lap in a given race are both worth 1 point each, and therefore while Sam Sherwood may have taken the win, Rosev has equalised given the fact he took pole and the fastest lap over the race distance. Reece Saunders, meanwhile, in P3 on 36 points, finds himself in a little bit of a deadlock battle versus Damien Lobbett to begin with Heckelstad then in P5 ahead of Ryan Davies and Peter Kostos, Aspal, Joneman and Brian Walker completing the top 10. Site Anti there, best SP 11 for Symphony Esports ahead of UKSimRacing Price's Mark Davison. And watch out for Davison in particular. We saw in Season 10 how Davison was able to come alive in the latter half of the season, and I wouldn't be surprised if he's starting to pitch his pace forward as of the midpoint of this season as well, with Empire Motorsports' Nathan Scott P13, hoping to get a better qualifying lap in next time around, so that way he's not in to push from the back of the field, because we saw a lot of pace on the number 13 driver, and indeed potentially top 5 pace in the elite class, with Ryan Moles and Sam Congreve completing the top 15, and then Martin Tilley and Andy Jones completing the elite standings. Coming on to the pro class, meanwhile, Aaron McGregor with that absolutely dominant drive to victory, taking the first win of the season, and with that 41 points to his name. Not quite a perfect score, however, 3 points secured down Sharples, with Casper Tunstead completing the top 3. Behind them, Chris Constable and Daniel Pays, and then we can see it's P6 for Aaron Beaver, the privateer, the leading privateer of the class, with Matt Strand, Bevan Thompson, Richard Jones and Alexander Tremino Michelson completing the top 10. Best the rest, Casper Brotner for Old Dudes in Cars, and what has been a bit of a baptism by fire into Season 11 for the number 111 driver. And Chris Kirkland, P12 for Downforce Racing, getting right in the thick of it over the course of the racing today, with Newbridge Esports' Brandon Hay, Rob Armstrong for UKSimRacing Moss, and UKSimRacing Clark's Mark Johnson completing your top 15. Alan Lever P16 ahead of Rudy Avitsalam, with Kerry Kokorin completing the run to P18 there for Downforce Racing, and then Martin Fernie and Lewis Payne completing your top 20, albeit not competing as of this round. The same can be said for the privateers John Watt and Joe McManus, with Ian Maz and Giles Phillips completing your pro standings. And then coming on to the AM class, last but not least, John Doble leads the way after round number 1, and we won't see him until round number 4 now, which means his rivals are Jack Wyborn, Steiner Sani, Thomas Barjack and Stuart Pearson inside the top 5 will be eager to make some early progress over him. Neil Smith P6 there, and keep your eyes out for the disaster prone racing in round number 2. I can tell you one thing, he'll be looking to make it a win as a minimum in order to make up the lost ground, with Paul Joseph Cliss P7 ahead of Sean Gaffney, and Simon Andre Livingston and Marvin Cruz completing your top 10. Behind the bike racing drive, TC Sport Tyre Satinda Dinsa, with Stephen Parker Hamilton, Cy Hartley, BJ Alvarez and Ricky Pink completing the top 15, and yet to score any points that have not competed in the round, Matt Maddox, Matt Edmondson and James Connolly. But that's how the AM class stands, and then finally onto the team standings, and we can see after one round, it is ProTech Motorsport who out of our 28 teams leads the way over TC Sport Kimi by 3 points. It's close at the top between the two of them, but right now ProTech Motorsport have a slight edge, and then P3 it's Racing Lab Esports AM ahead of their AM2 sister team, 64 and 62 points apiece, and TPA Racing completed the top 5. Slow and Steady Racing, living up to their name there in P6 on 56 points. Neither of their drivers really achieving a huge result today, albeit looking towards top 5 finishes, but the key point being they got steady points on the board, and therefore that puts them right in the thick of it going forward into the next round, as it does for UKSimRacing Price, who are on 54 points, or only one clear of Symphonerd. Old Dudes in Cars and UKSimRacing Moss complete your top 10, with a 4-point deduction there for UKSimRacing Moss, and 2 points off for Clark puts them best SP 11 ahead of Empire Motorsport, with TC Sport Tyre Team Year 1 and Peak Sim Racing completing the top 15. Ignium Motorsport P at 16 ahead of Disaster Prone Racing, with Racing Lab Esports and Free, Olympus Esports and Simulation Motorsport completing the top 20, and then all on 22 points, separated by result count back, Satellite Racing, Downforce Racing and Bike Racing, with Team Sim Racing Chicago and Aspire Racing Team completing the top 25, and then that teams that have got points to their name. Yet to score any points, ProTech Academy, Phillips GP and AI Race Summaries DCW Racing. But now, with the points card, we can definitely begin to wrap wrap up, and we'll thank you very much for watching, ladies and gentlemen. If you have enjoyed today's show and you want to know more about the UK sim racing community, perhaps you're sat there right now thinking that you've absolutely loved watching the racing action and you want to be on the grid for one of our ongoing or upcoming series, we definitely recommend you check out our official website. You saw that earlier in today's program, and that's UKSimRacing.co.uk, and you can find out all the information about our ongoing and upcoming leagues and all about what we do on the virtual simulation platforms. Alternatively, if you want to follow us on social media, our best recommendation would be to go to our Twitter. That's at twitter.com/UKSimRacing_, where you can keep up to date with all of our series and also the trials and tribulations of the official UK Sim Racing esports teams. And whilst we're here, we'd like to say a big thank you to our affiliates, and those include Swellier Meta Sim Racing Coaching, Race Anywhere, Demon Tweets, SimLab, and Amazon. Starting with Swellier Meta Sim Racing Coaching, the creator of the Motor Racing Checklist, Swellier Meta Sim Racing Coaching can help take your sim racing drive to the next level, whether you're looking to gain a 10th, improve your approach to the racing line, or develop your consistency. Swellier has a coaching course to meet your needs. Plus, with Swellier being a multi-time champion of official iRacing series, including the 2021 PSCC, you know you're receiving coaching from the very best in the industry. We also have their Race Anywhere, the provider of curated sim racing equipment and to only stock products that represent excellent value for the sim racing community. Demon Tweaks, the provider of the most complete and innovative motorsport product range available worldwide. So no matter what your level of discipline, Demon Tweaks could help drive you to realise your motorsport ambitions. SimLab, the leading manufacturer of high-quality sim racing-related hardware. As a proud partner of Mercedes AMG Petronas Esports, SimLab aims to enhance virtual racing experiences with uncompromising solutions that push the boundaries of esports. And lastly, Amazon, the company striving to be the Earth's most customer-centric company, the Earth's best employer, and the Earth's safest place to work through the position of concepts pioneered by Amazon, including, but not limited to, one-click shopping, Amazon Web Services, and Amazon Alexa. But with that, ladies and gentlemen, attention now turns to round number 2 as we make our way over to continental Europe for the first time this season and to begin the double-header in Spain. The Circuito de Jerez and Jonito plays host to our drives in round number 2, and with all the racing action occurring as of this coming Sunday, the 2nd of July, we'll be bringing it to you as if it were live in the post-round broadcast on Tuesday, the 4th of July. We've seen some drivers lay down a marker. In the elite class, it's the rivalry between Sam Sherwood and Eric Rosef. In the pro class, it's Aaron McGregor who's led the way by storm, and in the AM class, John Doble has put down his pitch, but he won't be here until round number 4 once again, meaning his rivals have got the opportunity to gain ground. How will the story continue in the second round of the season? We'll tune in then, and we'll find out more. But until then, we've been UK Sim Racing. I've been your host and commentator, Paul TX141 Walsh, also known as Britain a Spit, depending on what media you follow me on. And until next time, remember to stay safe, stay well, stay smiling, but most importantly, remember to stay on track. Good night.